Did you move to a fictional burb in Arizona where life was so miserable that you had nowhere to turn but to cast your lonely thoughts into the expanse of the Sonoran night by way of a shortwave radio? While maintaining your studious wallflower status, did you build an audience by reading letters from your listeners wedged between your lewd simulations of self-stimulation and your decent exposure of a corrupt school administration? Did all of this eventually put you in the crosshairs of the Paradise Hills Police Department and the Federal Communications Commission? If so, you may have just turned the dial to FM 92 and the Unkind Rewind, where we saw the 1990 Youth in Revolt pirate radio dramedy Pump Up the Volume.
Thrill me.
I'm gonna name you Coda. You get a name too, Poto.
I got good news and bad news, girls. The good news is your dates are here.
What's the bad news?
They're dead.
You too? You got a boner too? Blue Steel.
Greetings from the North Star State, where I, Josh Dugan, look forward to the day where the Unkind Rewind draws a riotous audience like Happy Harry Hard-Ons before being abruptly hauled off by the FCC. As is customarily the case, I'm joined by my Knickerbocker co-host, Sean McGrath. Sean, have you been adamantly minding your own business in public as youths flout authority after being goaded into rebellion by your anonymous words?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say that this movie had something to do with the amount of people that, like, scream and yell blah in my face and then flick me off, kind of walking away. But I live pretty close to Times Square, so it's another day. Just another day for me.
On the line this week, we're being graced by the presence of none other than Conan Neutron. How is, and I can't believe this is Wikipedia's first listed nickname of the city that you call home, Cream City, treating you? Conan.
Boy, that's appropriate, isn't it? Cream City. Cream City.
Cream City.
It's like a spot on the Candyland board.
Oh, right.
Like adult Candyland, maybe.
I know, right? Yeah. Boy. Strangely, it would be less horned up than the actual movie. Yeah. So stuff's great, Josh. It's not below freezing. So hey, I'll take it.
It got cold here last night. Yeah.
Makes for good sleeping, but not for good basement podcasting.
No, surely not.
That's why you got to move to Arizona.
I know, right? Yeah, exactly.
Or Santa Clarita.
It looked pretty fucking cold there too.
They shot in Santa Clarita.
Yeah, desert does get cold at night. People don't realize that.
Yeah,
especially
cold.
high desert.
Yeah.
Low desert, like a little bit, but high desert, like it gets cold.
Yeah, it drops like 50 degrees from its high.
When we did the photo shoot for the new record, Way of the Neutron, it's predominantly, a few of it's in the Mojave Preserve, but the rest of it's in Joshua Tree National Park, which is up even higher in the high desert. And
yeah, you were in the upper part of the park, not the lower. Yeah.
The upper part, and man, I tell you, it's a good thing I was wearing those fancy jackets, because otherwise I'd be like, my God, like how quickly can we take these pictures? Good.
Yeah, it gets cold once you go up that like extra 1,000 feet or so. Yeah,
it's no joke.
Now, Conan, why don't you tell the listeners who couldn't scrounge together $5 to buy a bootleg copy of last week's ep and missed last week's Q's and T's installment a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I am a musician, rock musician. I write and record music and tour the country. The band called Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. And I also podcast regularly, weekly, even some might say, because that's the schedule, for a show called Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal, which has been going for 11 plus years. It is a mostly one-on-one interview show about music with musicians and artists who I enjoy and respect, but may not be household names. I'm also on a weekly panel movie discussion show called Movie Night Extravaganza that is informed, fast-moving, a little bit irreverent, and that happens weekly as well. We cover classic movies. We just did a Nora at the time of this recording because it's one of the first ones of us doing the Oscar movies, at least the ones we like, that we haven't covered. And that is obviously probably of most note to your listeners because of that. But it's a similar vibe in the fact that it comes from an informed place, but it's very funny. And, it moves along. I think it's a fun listen rather than, I don't know, most of these shows where it's like, it sounds like someone's like reading off somebody's last will and testament or something.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah, it's definitely.
Speaking of Oscars, last time we talked, Conan, was probably the time to sell your stock on Amelia Perez.
Right. I said that first thing I said in our group chat, I was like, oh, it looks like the Oppo research dump happened.
Yeah. Big time.
Someone's just like pacing, going like, fucking diamond hands, guys, diamond hands. Just hold on. It'll come back. There's going to be a bounce.
You think are they betting on that on Polymarket or what?
I mean, look, the one time I was really close to betting on the Oscars was when I saw Green Book, and I was like, they're gonna do it.
They're gonna give it to this.
They're gonna do it. Yeah, I walked out and I was like, there's so many like inherent boxes that the Oscars look for that movie just checked.
Yeah.
Like I really wanted to somehow find. I mean, I wanted to bet on that movie before the nominations. I was just like,
you just knew it.
It just had everything that they wanted. But Amelia Perez,
which I originally called. So what I originally called, I may have mentioned this last time, I can't remember, but it was like, okay, so this is like Crash 2004, but also Mrs. Doubtfire. So this is gonna win, man. This is gonna win. How is this not gonna win? Like like they're gonna be like, oh, this solves the whole trans problem. Great. Which is absolutely amazing in a year
like
that people
dust our hands and move on to the next issue. Yeah.
In a year where I saw the TV Glow and People's Joker both came out, they were like, "Oh yeah, Amelia Perez, that's it, great, done, we're done here." But that, for the wrong reasons, it looks like that is not going to happen. But
I really like how it's kind of just put everything into a blender a little bit too, because I hate fucking runaways and I hate
it's more of a jump ball now. Yeah, you're right.
I hate favorites. I love jump balls. Yeah, I love those scrambles on the court where it's just like, well, I don't know, like maybe everybody gets
maybe Moonlight wins.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it was great to see like Gold Derby, like Honora up in second place suddenly again, and even though I think if anything, it's probably going to be Brutalist. I think even though Corbet just parades around just as the most like arrogant guy I've ever seen in my entire life, and seems like generally insufferable, but I think that's the most likely scenario. I guess we'll find out if I'm right or wrong.
I think, but I think in terms of best actress categories now, Mikey is certainly in play.
Yeah.
Fernanda is in play.
Yep.
Fernanda's kind of like that Olivia Colman dark horse.
That's
when
right.
When she snuck in for favorite. I don't think it's gonna be Gascon.
No.
That's
like
that ship sailed.
Yeah, it's like that is in the sub basement of the nominees now. But I think Demi is. I was very skeptical. Let's put it that way before the Golden Globes, and I think not just her winning, but her speech when she won. That's gonna get a lot of play.
People want good things for her.
Yeah, and like I think if anyone watched Bratz, which I assume a lot of the Academy actually did, they're gonna see that she's actually kind of like surprisingly well adjusted.
The best one of the bunch.
Yeah. I mean, Lowe was okay too.
Yeah,
those two were fine, but. They had sort of like come to terms with everything. They of course had a lot more success than any of the other guys did. But yeah.
I will say that we have our own moving extravaganza. We do like predictions of who will win and who wants to win, and we're the only ones that are allowed to change it after you do
the who should.
Yeah, who should win, right?
Yeah.
And all of us basically like anytime Sing Sing was anywhere in there, it's like, yep, that's it. So it's like, I think we all went Coleman and Domingo, right? For the same instance. And even though like the song is like maybe the least interesting thing about Sing Sing, I'm like, yeah, I want that to win. Just because I wanted to get recognized. And it's absolutely abhorrent to me that it didn't. It'd been Best Picture, but A24 fumbled the bag so hard on that rollout. It's amazing. It makes Past Lives look like they were doing The Brutalist. But I think it's I agree. I do like it when it's not just this. Oh, it's going to be this. It's this movie's year, right? Like, and when there is some ambiguity, I still think the most funny outcome would be if Conclave got it. You know, after nobody talking about Conclave for forever.
Yeah,
I mean, just if
really-
you've seen Conclave, you know why that would be funny. I don't think it's the
Yes.
best movie, but I mean,
No, I really
Right,
liked
right.
it though.
I like it. I just don't
Yeah.
think it's, but it would be a hilarious outcome. Am I right? Conclave.
Yes.
What?
Yeah. It would be kind of delicious, given the movie that was the presumptive winner a week and a half ago, because we're recording this like a week after the Gascon sort of oppo dump happened.
Yeah.
So yeah. Now, before we get in too deep and
Yeah,
run
so
the
everyone's
risk,
gonna be like, these idiots. So this has happened.
yeah,
months
yeah,
ago.
yeah. I know. We're recording this on February 4th, well before the Oscars. So
Yeah, like was this? Did they do this before Will Smith got up and slapped Conan O'Brien?
Before we get in too deep and run the risk of arrest without giving you the chance to peddle your multitude of wares and dates, where can they find you? When's Caterwall, et cetera,
Oh,
et
yeah, yeah.
cetera?
So Secret Friends, Conan Neutron, the Secret Friends on all the various streaming things. But if you go to the Bandcamp page, neutronfriends.bandcamp.com, it has all our upcoming tour dates, of which I'm not sure exactly which ones will have already happened or coming up. But we have a busy year, so I think it's somewhere we're going to hit everywhere in the U.S. this year, largely into May and June. And yeah, that's just a good place to go too, because you can also buy merch there. Yeah, if you want to have any of the money go to us in any way, it should probably be through Bandcamp.
Yeah.
But we're on all the things that don't give us a dime.
Or
as
at the
well,
merch
so.
table.
At the merch table too. I mean, come out
Yeah.
to the show, sure, absolutely. And then moving to Extravaganza for, it's predominantly like YouTube and then podcasted later, but we're on all the things that you think that we would probably be on. And we have a moving to extravaganza.com for that. My show, Protonic Reversal, protonic.com, has a Patreon, $1 a month advance access. Very Bernie Sanders model, right? Just nothing exclusive, just $1.
Yeah.
But you can sign up for that, and that helps me out as well as I kind of move towards into the 12th year in April of doing that show, which
And
in podcast
you'll have
years is like 90. So
You'll have a new record that'll have just dropped, right?
Way of the Neutron, yeah, Conan Neutron, the Secret Friends, Way of the Neutron. That's our first dedicated full length since 2020. We've had a couple records since then, but they've been split releases. And yeah, it's my favorite one, and it's very good, and people should give it a shot if you're into weird rock music. And that's all I got to say about it. We got some videos and stuff coming out, but can be a lot of road work, as they say.
And then Caterwall's into May?
Caterwall's into May, yeah. 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th of May, 2025.
And that's a noise music festival. in
I don't
Minneapolis.
characterize it that way, but many other people do. Yeah,
Okay.
a bunch of weird,
Noise punk.
weird heavy
yeah.
bands.
Sure.
You're not going to see people playing Wonderwall, for sure. But like, but yeah, it's our fourth year for it, and we got a great lineup. Yeah, people should come out. It's a good time. It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but we're also
I
playing
bet.
that as well. But
Yeah.
and I feel like we've gotten into this weird habit of like we only play Minneapolis when we play Caterwall. But I say that now, and I remember we just played St. Paul with Dead Bob in November, so never mind. That's not accurate. But
Where in St. Paul did you play?
Turf Club.
Okay, that's what I assumed, but yeah.
My place.
Yeah, great place.
Yeah,
Well,
Turf Club's awesome.
the time Josh almost killed me was that Turf Club.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I mean, just through drinking.
That was the setting of my 21st birthday.
just through drinking. Oh, okay, good. That makes it
But
okay.
Conan, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Back then, bar time was 1 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
in Minnesota.
So we had a power hour.
We had 1 power hour between midnight and 1 a.m.
Yeah.
9 shots. And I was like 77 pounds back then.
Sure. Yeah. Great. What could go wrong?
Josh was there to see that.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Oh my lord, that was a rough one.
Oh man.
Sean's never had a drink since.
Why would I? I hit my quota.
Yeah, you have enough for a lifetime
My God.
in a
yeah.
1 hour period.
I was pickled.
All right.
Which
so
is sort of
as
like the
I-
resting state of people in Wisconsin. But anyway,
Oh,
Whatever.
yeah. Milwaukee's like every time I go out of Milwaukee,
Cream City, please. Thank you.
yeah. Sorry. Every time I go out in Cream City, I am like concerned that I'm not going to make it home.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty seasoned drinker.
Right. It's not your first
I
rodeo.
drank away a decade of my life in Austin. So
Conan, next time you're at Turf Club, if you could take my Polaroid off the band wall, that would be great. Just a little sleight of hand, man. Get me back in the door.
Yeah.
All right, so getting back to Pump Up the Volume. As I admitted last week, I believe the last time I saw this would have been shortly after moving to Austin, so around 20 years ago. I'd seen it a couple times before that. But Sean, what was your history with Pump Up the Volume?
Saw this from the video store, within a year or two of it coming out. So yeah, it was probably like 11 or 12. And that's how long it's been. So there were a lot of big details I didn't remember. But yeah, I was pretty in the dark on this. This was like just a one-time watch. It wasn't on replay in the house for me.
And Conan, how long did you think it was since last you saw this?
Oh God, like decades. Like it's long time. Sometime in the 90s.
Sure.
More than likely on VHS. Right. I may own this VHS. I'll never know because it's on the other side of the garage. And I don't feel like going up to go get it. But
Sure.
if only there was some way to find out. No.
So, in a joke, right after you learned this was the movie that had been chosen from your list, you said one of its catchphrases, "Talk hard."
Mm-hmm.
Were you aware of the fact that "Talk hard" was what writer-director Allan Moyle wanted to call this?
No, but that's pretty good title. I mean, it's from the Planet of the Apes school of what are you getting into with the title? Well, that's what this is. Pump Up the Volume could be like, I don't know, is it about like amplifiers? What are we talking about here? Because it is, I mean, music features heavily, but it isn't, the focus isn't on the music. The focus is on the teenage connection.
Right.
Although, I don't know. And it talk hard. Yeah, but I guess that would have worked. It definitely would have explained all of the boner humor.
Yes.
Of which there was a lot that I had apparently redacted from my memory.
And
I remembered all of that, but
we don't ever really get we don't get that phrase "pump up the volume" in the movie, right? Like I don't think
so. No.
Yeah.
No, that was Bob Shea wanted to call it that. Producer from New Line.
Pump Up the Volume's a good
maybe I'm
phrase,
confusing
so.
producers. Maybe it was not. No, I think it was Bob Shea though. Yep, yeah, it was Bob Shea. Sorry, I found the note.
Did that phrase exist in the? Is it like a Gleaming the Cube situation where that phrase didn't actually exist before the movie, or what?
Well, "Pump Up the Volume," the song was a hit already.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Now, "Gleaming the Cube," we obviously we talked about this quite a bit in the.
It's almost a spin-off podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the "Gleaming the Cube" podcast.
Welcome to the Cube,
actually
the only Gleaming the Cube podcast on the internet. Yeah.
That was taken from a 1983 interview in Thrashing magazine.
Really? Okay. All
Mm-hmm.
right.
Yep. Some skateboarders who, fuck if I know who they are. One of them said it.
Do we know what that means? I don't know what that means.
No idea.
Okay.
I still don't. Yeah.
It's just like,
Is it
I
a
don't
state
know,
of mind?
being like extreme and in a flow state or something. I don't know. We'll get there when we eventually do.
It
Gleaming
sounds
the
like
Cube,
a
I'm sure.
phrase like out of Krull or something. Some fantasy.
You must
like,
gleam the cube to achieve your quest. Yeah, exactly. I do.
Okay, so we're about to throw to the first clip. And
Sorry. Pump Up the Volume. Didn't really. Yeah, you know what? And like, it's a song. Pump Up the Volume. That song. It was like '87 or something. And there's like, I think like Eric B. and Rakim sample or something. I vaguely remember it. But
Right.
Not my genre,
I mean, it was a hit song.
it
but
was
not...
people knew what it was. Yeah.
So in the first clip here, we asked you what you remembered the plot of Pump Up the Volume being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I remember it's very much a New Kid in Town story. It's Christian Slater, right? Is the guy, and he's a rebel, and he's very much doing like a Jack Nicholson-y kind of vibe.
Well, I think that's just him. isn't it?
Definitely
He
around this
leaned
time.
into it. He
Yeah,
definitely
he leaned
did
into
for a
it big
while.
time. But he does like a pirate radio station just because he's a rebel. He's a rebel that does rebellious things, and
Mhm.
everyone's worried that it's going to teach the kids that you can be a rebel and play, the Pixies.
Sure, yeah.
Although Pixies might not be in the movie, they're definitely on the soundtrack. Which
Mhm.
there's I've listened to the soundtrack tons and tons and tons, but I remember specifically the Leonard Cohen. Everybody knows the dice are loaded, like featuring heavily in the movie.
Mhm.
And for some reason, they couldn't get the rights for the soundtrack, so they had Concrete Blonde do a cover of it, which was cool.
Uh-huh.
But I was like, no, but where's the
Right.
one that I know from the movie? What the heck? But yeah, he comes to town. He's doing this radio station. They don't want him to do it. Like the FCC or something comes after him. They're like, I don't even remember if there's like a chase or what, but they're trying to shut him down. And like he gives some impassioned speech about, I'm going to assume free speech.
Okay.
And that's about it. I don't really remember. There's a romance of some kind, I
It
think.
sounds like Footloose.
Except for with pirate radio instead of
Yeah.
dancing.
Take out warehouse dancing.
Yeah.
And maybe tractor chicken fights, and you're replacing it with. So I mean, like if we're pitching Pump Up the Volume, we're saying it's Footloose, but with pirated radio.
Yeah.
New kid in town. He's kind of he's a counterculture kid.
Yeah. He doesn't play by the rules.
He doesn't play by the rules. Yeah. He's gonna ride the line.
Yeah, exactly.
So, holding off on the soundtrack for just a second, we'll get there really quickly here.
Sure.
I don't want to presume to speak for you, but I can say that I'd forgotten how much of a wallflower he was at school.
Oh yeah,
Was that side of Mark something you'd forgotten?
absolutely. It's shocking the amount of stuff I forgot about this movie, actually. But crazily, I think I got about 85% got there with my recollection. But yeah, I had forgotten that he was like almost like it's the Clark Kent thing, Superman thing. If Superman talked about boners on the radio, and
That's a superpower, right?
It is, absolutely. I think I gave it too much credit as far as the messaging of the rebellious act, right? Which is just, typical 90s, just like, be yourself. Yeah. What? What does that
Sure.
even mean? What is that? That's not a directed message. But it's of the time. It's it's whatever.
Right.
It's generationally. But I do think it was interesting. Well, I like that the opening monologue in this. It could be like today.
Oh,
Like I was like,
Yep.
holy crap! This is
Yeah,
just like
I mean, it's so funny too because like I wanted to supplant that character today, right? I wanted
Yeah.
to be like, dude, you have no idea what's coming.
you
like,
think it's
he's
bad
like-
now, man.
He's like the first one of the first kind of things he says is everything is so fucked up now,
Yeah.
and I'm like, bro,
yeah.
bro,
We're in dark 1985 now.
bro, what are you? Yeah, we're in
I actually
we're in Back to
wrote
the
it
Future
down.
Part 2.
I wrote it down, which is, you ever get the feeling in America that everything is completely fucked up?
Right.
You know, that feeling the whole country is like 1 inch away of saying, that's it, forget it. I mean, think about it. Everything's polluted. The environment, the government, the schools, you name it. And it's like, you thought it was bad then?
Bro,
It's so much worse now.
So much worse.
Oh,
but
God.
I was like laughing because I was like, oh my God.
How
Like, this is
prescient
like,
was that?
What year was this? Jesus
I
H.
know.
Christ.
I mean, I was
You sweet
sorta-
summer child.
like, it's been a really bad last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, fuck.
like,
Yeah.
there were moments watching this where it was just like impossible to wrest myself from from the sort of like doom scroll climate that we're in now, where it's just like everything you see is a goddamn nightmare.
Yeah.
And this hit oddly hard at certain points where it's like,
Agreed. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's the actual message of rebellion is like just that early 90s nothing of just like directionless. It's expression. The rebellion is expression. Okay. Well, now that's been 1,000% commodified, right? Like that's what you do on these platforms. You express yourself, and that's like
Yeah.
very safely ensconced in a walled garden. Right?
I mean, that's the thing too. Like he, obviously we'll talk about the kind of suicide subplot here, but like he ends that first night by saying, nothing to look forward to, no one to look up to, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is a bleak fucking outlook at the start of this movie. Thank God we have some pretty radical font with the credits, because
those fonts
otherwise
were
yellow, like bright hypercolor yellow.
Sean, can I
just
tell you? I have a note that said opening fonts hilarious. Those are the 3 words that I put on, because it's straight out of. Here's what I'll characterize it, and I'm coming at it from the world of bands, right? That you play a show and you're like, oh, what is this? Oh, it's some punk venue. Okay, cool. Oh, they made a flyer. It's like, oh no. And like those are the fonts you see from like that Punk House flyer, where it's like,
man.
Here it is. Okay, I guess it's legible.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're scrolling down and you're choosing your fonts from the list, like that's the one just labeled ICP.
It's always right next to Wingdings, even though it's not alphabetical, or even though everything else is alphabetical. Yeah,
it's familial.
They want you to sort through every possible other option before you get even below Wingdings.
Yeah.
A pop-up prompt, are you sure?
And then, are you actually really sure?
But what's crazy to think about is somebody hand drew those out. Somebody was sitting there like, no. Make it look more inept, please. And this is a major motion picture. This is not like an indie thing. This is like,
well, it is actually. New Line was an indie.
At the time, New Line was not what they would eventually become. But it wasn't like budget of like $5 in a pizza.
No.
That's what I'm saying. But yeah, those fonts are just like
the name.
This isn't Slacker.
Right.
No.
Yes.
The name that jumped out at me right away in those opening credits, though, Cliff Martinez did the score for this.
This is the second score he did.
That
you know what the first one was?
No.
Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Word. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm assuming. Well, the audience probably doesn't know who Cliff Martinez was, but he's a drummer for the Chili Peppers, and he was on one of the early '80s records for where the fuck can I think of it? I was just looking at his fucking page too. Whatever. But yeah, Chili Pepper drummer for most of the 80s.
It was before. It was post the guy.
Beefheart.
Beefheart
in '82, I think.
I think it was post Jack Irons, who played with Alan Johannes, but pre Chad Smith. By the way, did you know John McEntire from Tortoise tried out for the Red Hot Chili Peppers at the same time that Chad Smith did? Isn't that crazy?
Insane to me.
And it came down to those 2 guys, and it's sort of like, wow.
That's crazy. I mean, it's probably better for music.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, look, like
because Tortoise is awesome,
and I guess that it really came down to like Chad Smith, like already had the backwards baseball hat, and like they as dudes they were like more aligned,
right,
or whatever.
Right.
But I just the idea that like John McEntire, who's a great rock drummer, doesn't just do like Tortoise stuff, but like that freaking blew my mind when I learned that from my friend Randy Randall's show. But yeah,
that's crazy.
It's. Scores interesting. I think this is definitely like a soundtrack movie, which as we discussed, we'll get into that. But
yes,
Sex, Lies, and Videotape and Pump Up the Volume, not bad.
No. And I mean, obviously he goes on and, he scores Drive. He scores a bunch of a bunch of Soderbergh stuff. Like, I think his score for The Knick is like next level. Like, it's so good. Really raises the level of like what The Knick is doing.
Sure. Oh yeah, so he's done a ton of stuff with. He did Traffic. He did the Limey. Yeah, okay.
Oh, Limey's so good.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, that name I just was like, wow, okay, like a really awesome prospect at this time to kind of get the guy to score your movie.
Well, and the DP is Walt Lloyd, who also shot Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Yeah, this is the second movie that Chris Martinez did. Yeah, okay, cool. Right on. Yeah, no, he's done all kinds of stuff. Damn.
Oh yeah. Now, were there elements
Breakers.
of the plot? I love Spring Breakers. Were there elements of the plot that were wholly new to you this time?
I think I got the broad strokes of I guess the main thing is I don't really remember him being like, actually, he's a shy kid at school and the only way he can really talk is over the radio. I just sort of mentally redacted that, I guess.
Sure.
That's probably the biggest thing. I don't remember there being, not that there's tons of it, but like much female agency with the like, or story with the other characters. I just kind of vaguely, all I really remember was how Christian Slater was interacting with them. I remembered maybe 20% of the familial interactions, and that they somehow don't know that he's doing this show in the house.
We need to talk about that, right? like,
well, there's a lock on the door. There's a lock on the door, guys.
Well, and he has like, and then he like, first of all, he has a Music Man amp, one of my favorite amps, so I noted that as well. But like, where he has oh no, I just put this over here and it just looks like music equipment. Yeah, but does it though? And like, also, they don't hear you like
that's
feigning masturbation,
they don't hear you,
like
because he's like
at top volume.
Their son goes downstairs at 10 o'clock for an indeterminate amount of time, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 5 hours, right? And then you're parents of this kid, and you know that he's struggling, and all you hear is just kind of muffled, like, are you not like, there's, honey,
yeah,
can we come down and check, or at the bare minimum, like maybe let's walk around to the sliding glass door at the back and take a peek and just see like
what he's up to,
what's going on. Yeah,
you don't want to, if you think he's actually masturbating, which he is, aping often. I don't think you go through that. You don't go to the screen door.
So I will say
try to get a peek.
I do think it's definitely deployed that, again, especially looking at this in modern sensibility, just thinking that whole when they go in and like, what are you doing in here? And then like Samantha Mathis like jumps up, oh, he's in here with me. That works so well as a scene because it's like, oh, okay, yeah. And then of course Dad's like, oh yeah, good job.
That does not work as well, right? Because Dad somehow makes this pivot.
He makes it worse.
Oh God, it is
so
gross.
Bad.
Yeah,
like, come
like
on.
there's so many lines. Like, you've been a bad dog, he tells his son.
Yeah.
Like ribbing him like he's a drinking buddy.
Yeah. Like suddenly,
like he's a
it's
condom.
Just, yeah. It's suddenly just like they're at the gym or something.
Yeah, the dad,
like, okay,
the dad,
gross.
especially for that character too, right? Like the dad who is this like superintendent who is very straight-laced, who's kind of like playing the, authority figure within the house and squaring off against his son, to suddenly see that his kid's getting some. What was the thing? Yeah, my idea of homework, he wink told his mom.
Yeah.
And then his mom counters with, like father, like son. It was such a strange part of that movie,
it's all like one click over the line from where it should be, where it's like, okay, you don't need to point this out. Like, I feel like that's too much you don't need exposition about this.
It absolutely could have ended with seeing that he's with a girl, realizing like, okay, things are coming together.
Like, oh, we'll leave you alone. Yeah.
He's making friends, because like by the time we got up to their little like shirtless slow dance in the backyard, I expected them to pan to like the window and see his dad plastered against the window, like fogging the glass. Like cartoon wolf.
Yeah.
It was so strange, but whatever.
I don't think I can recall another movie where Scott Paulin plays a father. To me, he doesn't have big father energy.
Not really. Like what? Like Right Stuff. He's seeing Cat People, right?
I believe so. Captain America, the canon.
Yeah.
Isn't he normally like a dick though? Like, doesn't he normally
Yes, he's almost always a bad guy.
He's in Teen Wolf, but I don't really remember Teen Wolf that well.
He's probably a bad guy.
We have a couple people in Teen Wolf from this.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, James Hampton.
So one of the things I forgot, like the Samantha Mathis, the Nora character. There's a lot more going on there than I remembered. Like, she's actually, again, passes the Bechdel test, right? Her and her buddy are sitting there, like, talking about stuff. Then they, obviously they end up talking about Hard Harry as well. But she like pursues him for like the vast majority of it because he's such a shy.
She is very aggressive.
She's relentless, and like, I actually think that's
which is
cool.
refreshing, honestly.
Yeah. For 1990, I mean, like, you just didn't see a lot of that. So I like her
And yet-
character.
Yeah, it's
Oh, yeah.
it's weird too, right? Because like he, like every other boy at that school, is in love with Paige.
Right.
He makes that really kind of sad attempt at Paige.
Yeah.
But like Samantha Mathis is like DTF.
Yeah.
This
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
And you. And just completely like oblivious, doesn't see it. I could get if he had no interest in anybody, if like Paige and her perfection was not something that gels with him, because it doesn't really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Paige is kind of, has the personality of like a wet bag.
Well,
Like-
to be fair, I think that there's school mark and not school mark, and I think
Yeah.
Paige would be the like before he's more comfortable being like one thing and not like a dichotomy of like
His Superman Clark Kent.
wallflower.
When it was unlimited charisma,
right,
people
right.
go to the field to go listen to this radio show. They make it an event where they drive to this field to listen to a radio show together. By the way, explain this sentence to like a Gen Z person, right?
Oh,
Like, what?
yeah.
What are you talking about?
But there's I think that
You mean a
Shy
podcast?
Mark-
No, it's not a podcast. It's a
right. But yeah, I think that Shy Mark would be interested in her, and that it's a matter of him needing to shed Shy Mark.
as he kind of becomes this unified entity that
Right,
has his own
right.
confidence and so on and so on.
Where he can stand, on the hilltop and scream from the Jeep or broadcast from the Jeep, but where they can all see him.
I mean, that's why Mark needs a buddy in this movie, and he doesn't have one, because that friend of his would be like, bro, Nora is
This
smoking hot.
chick's super cool. She clearly
She's super cool.
is into
She's
you.
she's into what you're doing.
Yeah.
And like,
You're fucking up here. Yeah.
yeah, dude. Like
You're wasting some valuable time here.
Yeah.
You're wasting some valuable testosterone in the basement.
Yeah. Now, Sean, you're usually pretty good with remembering these movies when it's one we'd seen before. Just ballpark, what percentage of this film do you think you remembered? Or would you say you remembered while watching?
I mean, for me, yeah, I remember the broad strokes. I did. I mean, as we talk about sometimes with movies around this era, I did remember that there was a topless scene.
I forgot totally.
I absolutely remember
yeah,
that.
the North remembers. Yeah, I remember that.
Yes, yeah. And the South never forgets. if you know what I mean.
Yep.
But yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is like I thought we were all like this movie was leading to the suicide, and
Right,
where
yeah.
it comes in this movie is so surprising for me. I thought like that's like the second act break, and like that's what kind of brings everybody like down on him. But like it happened so early for me in this movie.
Yeah.
It was like like if I'm doing this movie from scratch, like I have that guy call in a couple times, right?
Sure.
To establish
And
it. Yeah, right.
to establish that he doesn't do it, right?
Yeah.
And then one time that maybe Hard Harry gets a little upset and a little short and a little more dire than he is normally, or despondent. And then and then the kid kills himself. But like I was like, whoa, I was totally off on the pacing of this movie. I think it works because of just like how
Well, it's surprising, and you don't like when you don't expect something. Like when a movie actually surprises you, it's kind of refreshing, honestly.
Yeah.
I think it's surprising because it did not follow like the template. Like,
Yeah.
this is like the type of moment that happens. This is the Dead Poets Society kind of suicide in my mind. That's where I kind of thought we were headed. So for it to kind of happen, I mean, it's real hard for him to kind of go back to masturbation after that. Like, can you imagine if he like came on the next night?
Yeah. Back to
Yeah.
slapping his neck and
Back to slapping it around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it worked just because like I like to be, we go into these movies, we know how it works. Like I need to be slapped across the face a little bit to kind of wake up. with a movie. Otherwise, I'm just going to be like, okay, they're going through the same old paces. So I'm glad. It was a happy surprise.
Yeah, I agree. It is kind of jarring, and if you stop and think about it, like a suicide is jarring. That's even if it's someone that you don't know, it's like what? Yeah, somebody, they killed him. Crazy. Like, so I agree. I remembered vaguely that there was one, and that he was not the direct cause, but like that he was involved. Like he basically took no action to stop it from happening. Is what
another nice thing that they do, which is unusual, is like, this is not a bully movie, and in my mind, he was like, especially when we see the fucking.
I mean, it is, but it's the principal. It's the staff of the school that are the
right. Yeah. But every like 80s, early 90s movie we're getting
it would be a jock in high school.
Yeah. Or when we in the first couple scenes when we get the fucking bleach blonde, like poor man's Kiefer there in the parking lot, who has been expelled. Right. Like, I was like, oh yeah, he's gonna be
he's the Flash Thompson of this scenario or whatever.
He's the Flash Thompson who doesn't know that he's beating up his idol.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
I thought that Christian Slater, like the nerd Mark, was going to be, having a hard time, picked on, like just kind of roughed up, maybe
getting
there was
pushed around,
a school fight, But again, a nice surprise that we don't go that way with him. And it's just some guy who kind of wants to be, let back into the zoo, standing there in the parking lot.
The suicide was inspired by a kid who Moyle had gone to high school with, who was like a pamphleteer. He was like putting out self-made pamphlets. He had like a basement printing press apparently. And the kid like suddenly killed himself out in the woods because, he didn't have it was like a small town in Quebec, and he just, didn't see the way out, But that Moyle has said that affected him pretty deeply. And so I mean, I think having the suicide weigh over so much of the movie is effective.
Mm-hmm. Well, because that's why that's why it becomes controversial, right? It's sort of like just like an open secret among the kids, but the parents are just sort of like, oh, what's this, whatever, and then it becomes like, wait, what, and then everyone kind of wakes up about it, right? So
because of Shep Shepherd,
right? Exactly, because it's being weaponized, and
what a name.
What a weird broadcast. Also, like his field piece in front of the funeral. The voice that he's affecting there is different from the voice that he affects in any other piece that he does.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Yeah. No,
there's some strange choices from the local news department. like I don't know how many like news stories, even on slow news days, are like, a girl blew up her kitchen.
Or teen suicide doesn't tend to get covered on the news either. Like,
yeah, it's a thing that like shocks this town.
Yeah.
I think like there's a big, something that I forgot about this movie was that they placed him at that high school so quickly. Like, I don't know if he's mentioning it by name, but like they seem pretty confident that it's a kid at that school right away. And I think like if I'm Mark, I'm a lot more vague and circumspect with like where I'm placing myself.
You don't give you don't have your like nom de radio be the same initials as the high school.
Right.
Shout out to Hubert H. Humphrey, BT Dubs.
Yeah.
Minnesota Zona. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I something else I forget. Ellen Green's whole character, like the sort of like the rebel teacher, who's very intrinsic to the actual plot point of the bad guys getting got. That like I had totally forgotten that character existed.
How do you feel about her musical movie, Conan? Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, Little Shop of Horrors, Fox. Yeah, I'm down for Little Shop. That's good.
Definitely a different character than Audrey, but yeah, it was nice to see her in this movie.
Yeah, that's right. She is Audrey. Man, we're actually gonna do depending on this. Maybe we've already done it, but we actually are gonna do Little Shop of Horrors, which I'm excited about because I haven't seen it in forever. I saw
I've never seen it.
I saw the alternate ending which is awesome. They like somebody uploaded on YouTube, and I'm like, holy crap, this is amazing. But like, yeah, Little Shop of Horrors goes.
We'll probably
it's
get to
good.
it here, Josh. But
Yeah, I assume we will. I'm not
If
gonna
we
watch
didn't
that.
have it on the docket, I probably
Yep.
I might have put that as one of the ones to revisit for this. But I was
Josh
like,
will have to watch a musical.
But it's a good one though. It's like one of like the ones that's like, no,
I don't.
it-
Yeah, like I like Hedwig and the Angry Inch. I can like a musical. It's just usually they suck.
Did you?
Yeah.
Preaching to the choir, my man.
Like Amelia Perez. Now,
Still catching flack.
yeah. Okay, the soundtrack is very central to this film. Conan, as someone
Yes.
who's had a long career in music,
Yes.
that came mostly after the last time you saw this.
Right.
How did the music play for you today?
Great. I mean, so within the context of the movie, so first of all, you see like early on, you see like his music collection, like his the stuff he's playing. And you've got like stuff like, remember this is 1990s, Soundgarden,
Yes.
Louder Than Love. You got Pixies, you got Rollins Band, which is a mainstay for anybody into rock music at the time, even though
Sure.
history has not remembered Rollins Band. Bad Brains. He plays "Love Comes in Spurts" by Richard Hell and the Voidoids at one point.
Yep.
Great usage. Beastie Boys, great. Don't ever need to see Christian Slater rap along to anything. Horrible.
Yeah, that was cringy.
But yeah, I mean, look, you got Kick Out the Jams and Cool Thing, like both like
Yeah.
in the context of the movie. I'm gonna be mad at that. So it's interesting when you actually look at the soundtrack itself. So the big takeaway for most people is that it's not just the Pixies, but, and I mentioned this earlier on, it's what's known as the UK surf version, which is Wave of Mutilation, but it's like slowed down and kind of more like
Yeah.
It's the B side from Here Comes the Man, right?
right. Here Comes Your
Which
Man.
you couldn't get that anywhere.
It was, again, hard to describe for younger audiences. It was something like, wait, what's that? Is that the Pixies? Like, this is cool. This is, and it's a song that it works great. It's a fast song, fast, loud song, and it works great as a kind of a more somber, slower song. But it's deployed so well here. It's one of those songs that you can't imagine this movie without that song being in there. Like it doesn't work the same way. And it being 1990 too is like even more like, oh, but I know tons of people are like, oh yeah, Pixies, fucking UK surf version, Wave of Mutilation. It was like, yeah, that's not the version of the record though. That's like,
yeah. I mean, does it get put on it gets put on the later re-release, right?
On one of they put it on, I think, like whatever the Death to the Pixies box set.
Yeah,
It gets a regular release like way later on. But I mean, the soundtrack is like,
but for like a ton of time, you couldn't get that song
for a long.
except
You had to have like a friend dub it for you on a tape or something, right? Which that was a mixtape regular for me. I'm not gonna lie.
Sure.
Like I was definitely, I'm making a tape for a girl. Great. Here comes Wave of Mutilation UK Surf. Oh, what was that version? Oh, well, it's from Pump Up the Volume, actually. And, but yeah, like I was right about the Everybody Knows, which we'll talk about at length, I'm sure, being not on the soundtrack, but like featured prominently in the film. I was totally right about that. And I was right about the Concrete Blonde version, which is good. I didn't remember that that's actually in the film, though. It's very briefly, but it is in the film.
Yeah, it's the last time he signs on, right? Right. Yeah, or the last time the song appears, at least, is the Concrete Blonde version. Yeah.
But yeah, Titanium Expose like is on that soundtrack. That's a great, like not even like a top tier like hit Sonic Youth song, but that's. Like soundtrack goes, and we're talking about Soundgarden. Like again, we're not even talking about Super Unknown Soundgarden. Or
this is
like
years
way
before
any of that. Yeah. So
this is when they're on Sub Pop at this point, right? They're just and like no one knew who Soundgarden was.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Do you know about the Beastie Boys situation?
Yeah. Yeah, that song was never allowed to be released. The label wouldn't release it.
Well,
really?
yeah, and they just had it laying around. They didn't want it released, and they gave it. They liked the movie.
That's that rules
so they gave them
the
scenario. Yeah, it's called The Scenario. It's a Beastie Boys song. It's again, it's not on anything outside of bootlegs, but they didn't want their music out there. They also liked the movie. The compromise that they made within the band was to give them something that they weren't going to release anyway.
That's awesome.
And so and the woman behind this is kind of interesting. Kathy Nelson was the music supervisor on this movie, and like she's such a unsung hero to
Hell yeah.
the tone of this movie. You know, a name that we don't really talk about, and I'm honestly, Josh, like a member of the crew that we don't really talk about a lot here.
Mm-hmm. No, she nails it. Music supervisor really nailed this.
She also did Grosse Point Blank,
which
Unbreakable,
I also love.
Great
and
soundtrack.
Armageddon.
Yeah.
Oh, and Children of Men.
Whoa.
Which
nice.
is for those listening, I am literally wearing a shirt of the movie Children of Men right now, which has an amazing soundtrack. I mean,
yeah, neither Big Star nor Loverboy are, which Sean and I are wearing shirts of. Neither of those are present.
But, oh yeah, she does a lot of. I mean, she does a lot of movies in general, but she was music supervisor on Scott Pilgrim.
And none of us, I should say, are wearing our shirts. Ironically,
no, right.
No,
it's important to note.
Unabashed Loverboy fan, but yeah, Kathy Nelson. Like maybe Josh, just a name to flag, invite on the show. Yeah. Certainly someone, and yeah, no,
I want to guess, be her friend. She seems fucking
when her
awesome.
kid went to college after this, her kid went to college in the 90s and like got major street cred because his mom put together the soundtrack for this fucking movie.
This movie definitely has one of those things. Has the type of feel like you would go to the record store and you'd find like the tape or CD of this like music inspired from the movie Pump Up the Volume, like the volume 2, the stuff that they couldn't get on the movie. There's a few movies that kind of do that where they just had too much stuff. They didn't want to, they couldn't drown their sweethearts. And so they released a second album. In some alternate world, there are 2 soundtracks to this movie.
For sure.
And it's hard to describe for younger film fans to know like what a treat that was. To have that available as a avenue of discovery. Like, and I feel like that happens now. If you see it now, it's more like people rediscovering something because of its usage within a movie rather than
Kate Bush.
Yeah, it's a perfect example.
Yeah.
But by the way, I forgot that that 10-second Descendants song is like in this and like is a whole bit, which is hilarious because like first time I heard the Descendants, I was like, was that a song? Like what was that? Yeah. That's crazy. And definitely like is the formative.
Was that the I'm in Jail?
No, that's the Welcome to Wiener Schnitzel. Can I take your order, please? Yeah. And it just go and it's like literally 10 seconds, right? And but somehow that's not
twice,
on the soundtrack.
Doesn't he?
He plays it twice, yeah. Somehow that's not on the soundtrack. I guess they never room.
Couldn't get clearance.
Probably couldn't get. Greg Ginn was probably too busy smoking a bowl to give him clearance for that. But no, I mean, I think this is one of the foundational 90s soundtracks, and it's interesting because since it is 1990, that like this is one of the ones that when you see someone's CD collection, you would see like this would be like one of the 3 or 4 that is like the soundtrack that they have.
And I think this really ushers in the 90s too. Like
yes.
Like this is looking forward a lot more than most movies that came out in 1990. Most movies that came out in 1990 feel very much like they're an 80s movie, and this doesn't.
The Dad I'm in Jail song is Was Not Was, by the way. But Dad I'm in jail.
Okay. Yeah, but there's no like new wave part of this. Like there's nothing
right.
that really sets this into, even like a John Hughes universe. It's a real it's a real bridge to what's going to be alternative, right? Which is a term that like is not really embraced kind of quite yet in the zeitgeist.
And I mean, soundtrack wise, I think this owes as much to like Spears's Suburbia as it does to any Hughes movie,
I'm almost positive I came to this after like already knowing who Sonic Youth was and stuff, so therefore being stoked when I heard Sonic Youth on the soundtrack. But like I didn't know who Peter Murphy was. Like Bauhaus, what's that? You mean the architecture? Yeah. Like because again,
you mean the font?
Yeah, because we lived in a world where I mean there were like wide swaths of things that you think someone would know about. They're like, I don't know. I didn't have a friend who had that tape,
And we didn't have the fucking internet.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like that's really key here. It's something that we're doing a good job of not bifurcating that the movie and this soundtrack, because in 1990 and for the next 10, 15 years, at least 10 years, hard to go and piecemeal something like this together. Like if you wanted to hear songs, you had to go and you had to get an album. You had to buy the whole thing.
Yeah.
And this soundtrack put these songs and these bands together for people to learn about, kind of breadcrumb their way into finding more about. Nowadays, if we were to do, I'm not going to get too far ahead of me, but if we're doing a movie with a soundtrack, there's so many different ways to get that music and hear that music. And the soundtrack doesn't have the power and the authority that it did in, say, 1990 with this movie.
Sure. Now, using that kind of as a jumping off point, like we surely all like cynically know the primary reason that they opted for covers in this film. And that's obviously rights were cheaper for covers than the originals. But setting that aside, like how did young Conan receive these covers?
I barely knew the MC5 was. So like I barely knew who Bad Brains was. I knew Henry Rollins was, but I was like,
sure.
it's Henry Rollins and some band called Bad Brains that I have heard people say is good, and they're playing this song that kicks ass. And that's
right.
I didn't need anything more than that. Of course, when I heard the actual kick out of the jams, I was like, it's a live version? That's weird.
Yeah, very strange. It's like the first time you hear that, you're like, wait, did I not get the right album?
No, there must be another one that has it. Oh, no, that's just what it... And then MC5 is a band that I love. I adore MC5. But
sure,
like, I think all their records are like weird sounding and not in a good way.
Yes.
Not like Entertainment by Gang of Four sounds weird, but it's weird in a good way. All the MC5 records are weird in a bad way. But I love them. They're one of the best rock and roll bands of all time. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But like... Again, having no frame of reference, because when I see this is still a couple years before I work at the record store. I worked at Tower. I did time at Tower Records, for a while, and that opened up my world in the way that like every kid with an internet connection has now. But then I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. So that's a Bad Brain song. They're this seminal hardcore band that like influenced like Minor Threat and like everyone else. Blah blah. And like we have all these other ones, and it certainly was interesting for me to look into the why. And the one that perplexed me for the longest was the Concrete Blonde cover, because I thought Concrete Blonde was okay. I never like had their records or anything, but I was like,
sure,
why that and not the one that's like so important in the movie that like is his setup music? Right? Like, it's like, and what a great song for it, too. Everybody knows that the dice are loaded, everybody rolls with their fingers crossed. Because it's just such a kind of haunting, musically, even though it is kind of like 80s dancey Leonard Cohen, it still works because it's so dark.
Yeah,
right?
The production on that record was a lot for me to get over. I'm a big Leonard Cohen fan. Like, saw him live. Saw him on that last tour and whatever.
You got like that, and I'm Your Man are like banger songs, and then there's the rest of the record. It's like, okay.
Yeah, first We Take a Manhattan.
Yeah,
very oddly produced.
Yeah, it's a weird record, but like that song is so good that, and I didn't understand like when I even got the CD. As much I love the CD, I was like, why is it this version? Why is it them? I didn't get it, and then I didn't understand. Oh, they didn't want to pay him. They didn't want to pay him for that version, right? So okay, that's why.
His wife was like mixed it, or she was involved in the recording of it. Moyle's wife was.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, like but also in a way it's kind of cool because also there was at the time a lot of tribute albums coming out. Like there was that Willie Nelson tribute album, and there was like all these, which is a weird thing to think about now because people don't know what the hell you're talking about. But the idea where you would hear like covers of songs from a famous artist by like other artists don't sound anything like Soundgarden doing a Devo song, right? Or something along those lines, and be like, oh, that's a different take on that. And that was interesting to me musically because it kind of lets you know like, oh, this is a way to, because the ones I usually like the most were the ones that didn't sound like the original. It's like they do a different take. They do something different with it, right? Tom Waits and Ramones doing the same song. Well, obviously those are going to be very goddamn different. And but this was maybe my first exposure to that, I guess. I mean, but I was more perplexed by it than anything else until I figured it out because it's dumb kid instead of a dumb adult.
Did it strike you at all as odd then that Happy Harry Hard-On, a high schooler in 1990, would be playing himself on with Leonard Cohen?
Yeah, you want to, because I always find it interesting what's people's path into music? Like, how do you find out about music?
Sure.
How do you find out that this is like what you want to do, so on and so on? I talk about it in Protonic a lot. And so I don't think it's impossible in the way that, like, if you see some movies from the 70s and they're playing television or something, it's like, come on. Like, unless there's someone's doing heroin in the other room, you probably didn't have that record.
Or unless you work at CBGB.
Right, exactly. There have to be like some rationale for it, and some of it's just like sort of wish casting and
Sure.
like people. I have a big problem with the portrayal of 80s, where it's like everybody wants to use 80s pop, but it's the coolest version of 80s pop. It's like, wasn't like that at all. It was like, that was like 1 out of 10 songs that you would hear would be like the kind of thing you're hearing. The rest would be just drivel, like mainstream drivel. But I think that like this works because like it's like kind of like randomly curated, right? So it's like, this is a kid who's withdrawn. He finds his rebellion in these different kinds of music. Like, what does he say with the Beastie Boys song? He's like, "It's a song for my close personal buddies, the Beastie Boys. A song so controversial they couldn't put it on their first record." He like has some talk up with it, right? Something along those lines. How did he get a hold of it? Who the hell knows? But that's the one thing where it's like, okay, maybe like a friend made a tape for him or something along those lines. I don't know. It makes sense because he's the kind of guy that would spend all his time trying to find little treasures like that. I think it works.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that this movie misses is the amount of time that Mark would be spending in a record store.
Yes.
Yeah.
He never goes anywhere fucking near it. And there's got to be one near his P.O. box, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it's the record store in Paradise Hills. It'd be like the record store that Conan would have grown up trying to go to in fucking Modesto, where you're only getting like 38 special remaindered albums. Like
yeah, not even the top tier 38 special.
Yeah. This movie is short.
Not Wild Eyed Southern Boys.
No.
This movie is a buck and a half. This is a 90-minute movie. A couple minutes with like a kindred spirit in a record store would have been really cool.
Yeah.
Just absolutely shop talking.
Have Samantha Mathis be in there and like
absolutely.
She spots him and like he gets wigged out and takes off. Like basically the equivalent of like the library scene with the with the book, right?
Like that'd be great if not to rewrite this movie, but like we have her overhear a conversation with the record store guy and Mark about music that we hear later that night.
Yeah.
Something, it was a little bit too easy to find him. I feel like the P.O. box, like he obviously publicizes his P.O. box number because he wants people to send it there. Like his like little like, I'm being sneaky here, like trying to buy like a porno mag kind of walk into the post office.
Super sus, yeah.
They know you're a student. They know your hours.
Yeah.
The smart thing would be play hooky for lunch and go like at 11 a.m. or something. But he rolls in there right after school. I mean, it's like anybody's gonna be able to find you, bro. It's a small post office, like and you're walking, and you're not even stuffing like your bright red envelopes in your bag as quick as you can. You're reading them
while you're there still. That's not sus. Yeah.
Well, and you should be able to sniff out that this fucking clerk behind the counter is a turncoat. Like that guy
big
is
snitch
so
energy.
Quick. He all he needs is a fucking badge flashed at him.
Yeah, but
he's willing to turn over whoever.
No. But Mark knew that, which is why he gave him the bogus address of the school.
Right.
But still,
Mark knew this guy was going to betray him.
Fuck that guy.
Well, but so I would chalk that up too, that he's very smart, but he's smart in that way that he doesn't. There's things that we would consider obvious as adults that maybe as a kid he wouldn't.
Like Nora likes you.
Well, yeah. Jesus Christ. Hey, this super cool like hot chick is like obviously way into you. Dogs know it, and
Now back to the library scene for a second.
Yeah.
The book, the Lenny Bruce book.
Yeah.
Annie Ross, the principal, dated Lenny Bruce.
Wow.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah, she was a jazz singer. And she dated Lenny Bruce in the late 50s.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, Annie Ross had been a bunch. She was in like Player. She's in like Wicker Man. She's been in all kinds of stuff. I mean, I think she's in Shortcuts. If I remember right. Big Altman guy.
The Player. I believe it's the.
Well, she's definitely in the
herself
play. I think she's.
Yeah,
I think she's in Shortcuts too.
I didn't
but
double check that she's in Shortcuts or not. I have it, but
it's one of my favorites. But there's 100. First of all, there's 100,000 people in that movie, and secondly, I haven't seen it in years. So
There's also 100,000 people in this movie.
there really is. Yeah.
I mean, if you guys want to like just shout out your favorite little supporting character in this, mine was Nigel Gibbs as one of the PTA dad that stands up.
Oh yeah,
and he is like a career cop on television.
Yes.
He's the chief of police in Albuquerque across the Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul spectrum.
Cool.
He was on The Shield for a long time. Josh has probably seen him 1,000 times.
Yeah, exactly.
There is, like a little kind of like weird, weird white guy script where the black father has to stand up at the PTA meeting and go, I worked with gangs. We're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But did you guys, I'm sure you guys clocked the young Seth Green in this.
I did.
Post radio days, pre Buffy.
I didn't know who he was first time I saw it. How would I have? Like, because of that, none of that stuff was out yet, or if it was,
Radio Days was, but that was yeah.
Come on,
You're not seeing,
don't give
you're
me
not
that much
seeing Woody
credit.
Allen. Yeah.
But Andy Romano as like the dean here.
Yeah, the vice principal or whatever.
Yeah. This sort of James, the Strickland of Back to the Future, but with a buzz cut.
No, he slays it. He's so good in this.
He's really good in it and super like
real like cop energy in this.
Yeah. But like one of our favorite kind of side characters in Major League as the assistant coach.
Yeah.
Standing there with his arms crossed, forcing Charlie Sheen to throw a ball right down the middle.
Yeah.
But yeah, like again, another surprise this movie is like how far he takes it because he beats the shit out of a student.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
talk about different times.
Seemingly without a lot of repercussions. Like
and he also he assaults Maz too. He doesn't beat the shit out of him, but he assaults him for sure when he hauls him off when he's setting off the smoke bombs.
Right.
Oh, right. Yeah. Just one thing about like schools and like at that time, it made me laugh. The mention of like your file, like the permanent record.
Yeah.
Like that specter in movies of this era. Like if you're one of the younger listeners, give us a shout out if you've ever heard that phrase, because the permanent record was this boogeyman that existed over your head, right, as a student throughout kind of high school, and it was going to derail your life if anything happened to it. And it was always used as that type of like threat in high school movies.
Now, to be fair though, this is actually based on Moyle's sister's school that she used to teach at in Montreal. They were actually doing this.
Interesting.
They were getting rid of any students who were testing poorly that they could to keep their testing scores up to game the system.
Yeah, which is again a huge plot point of this movie that I completely forgot.
Totally forgot.
Same.
I mean, honestly, that's like the most nefarious thing that's fucking going on here. Like that's fucked.
Yeah. It's huge. And like break it down real quick just for people who out there who didn't watch this movie
who watched this years ago and don't remember. So
just like us.
Basically what's going on in the school is and we're pretty much the first instant we see a bus pull up to the school, we see the first two students getting pulled off to the principal's office. One of whom is pregnant, one of whom is Latino. Yep.
So he's gone.
And they're basically getting all of the funding for a student body that then they are culling the people who they think are undesirable, who will test poorly, they'll have poor SAT scores, and they are getting rid of them, but they are getting the funding for having those students and claiming that the students are still going to school there. Right. So this school is like per Christian Slater's dad, the superintendent, or they call him something else, like school commissioner or whatever the fuck it is. But per him, this is the best school in the district. But it's the best school in the district because they're
juking the
effectively
stats is what they're doing.
Yeah. Comstat would have a field day with this shit.
They're cooking the books in a way of like they're getting the allocated per student funding.
Yeah.
And then they are making determinations before these kids have an opportunity to take tests.
Yes.
Right. There's
to bring their scores down. They're like, oh, this person's pregnant. This person's Latino. This person's a malcontent. This person's wearing a shirt that says "fuck" on it. You know,
Yeah.
like.
Right.
Yeah. And they're dinging you for any possible thing that they feel like they can and expelling you while still getting the funding for you. As
Still getting the money. Yeah.
Which could, anecdotally, those kids could all be fucking 130, 140 IQ kids and test amazing despite like having low GPA.
But they don't even have a chance to prove it because they're...
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's that looming like like something that would come up a lot in these types of high school movies was like the SATs, right? The SATs
Right.
or prom were always these like third act things that would come up in movies as like we are heading down the edge of the cliff is like the SAT date or prom for a lot of these movies. And I think there's at some point it says like 54 days to SATs. So that's this huge scandal that like it's uncovered in kind of a strange way. Like they do these firing, like I'm still unsure, and I just saw this movie of like how it actually is exposed because it's
so
not
he finds
hairy, right?
finds the letter in his dad's office that is from the guidance counselor to the principal saying that they've gotten rid of Cheryl because she doesn't share their values. She's the pregnant one. Right. And so that they have expelled her for basically bogus reasons, and he has found this letter in his dad's file and knows that it's because she's pregnant and not
because of any allegedly valid reason, right? And that's it takes a much larger role than I remember. Clearly, I didn't remember any part of it, so like I didn't remember that even like being like the terminus of the movie. I didn't remember.
Right.
I just remembered like it was like school sucks. Yeah, school does suck.
It's kind of the only
kind of what
win.
I remember.
I mean, he is hauled off by the FCC at the end of this movie.
Yeah,
but at least he's taken down this administration.
Can we speak to that actually? Because first of all, of the many things I did not remember that there was a helicopter that was chasing them up this mountain as they.
I think like a stealth helicopter.
Yeah,
too.
like it was like holy shit! Like this is like this is
because they don't hear it coming until it is overhead.
Until it's overhead, right? So it's like you have, and what they do is they take the broadcast at mobile, right, in the Jeep, and they get like the mobile rig, so because they have
sweet
to
Jeep,
them.
by the way.
Yeah, great good Jeep representation in this.
Good pick, Mom.
You guys know why she had to drive?
No.
Slater's license was suspended because he'd had 2 DUIs.
Oh, for real? Wow.
That's why he has to walk everywhere around.
Yeah, that's why he has to walk everywhere too.
That's funny.
Which actually works for the character, but
yeah. So Nora's driving and he's broadcasting. And of course, they take a weird turn and like, oh, my voice changer. I can't broadcast on my. But okay, dude, sure. Dude, there's a helicopter chasing you. They know who you are. You can probably.
I completely forgot also about the voice modulator.
But that's also it explains why people don't recognize him because even though it's like, it's not that much.
Clark Kent sunglasses, or
even though he's giving, he's giving listeners like his class schedule.
He's doxing himself on a regular basis.
God for thank God for the Ted Levine fucking Buffalo Bill voice.
Yeah, but it's also, to be clear, it was different times. Right? So
people weren't getting doxed left and right,
right? And so, but at that point, like him using the voice changers, that's his last crutch. That's his last division between the confidence he has as the hard, hairy character and Mark Hunter. So that is, and she's like, well, no, you have to do it. You have to do this. Like, but at first she's like, oh, maybe we can fix it. And it's fucking, come on. Like get a field strip. Well, there's a helicopter chasing you. Yeah, right. Whatever, dude. But I feel like it's not, it isn't that it's unimportant. I think it's actually an important plot beat in there, but it's one of those things where you kind of have to have the context of, like, dude, Radio Shack gets a solid shout out in here. And like, if you were anyone like us, it's like, oh yeah, Radio Shack, that's where you go get your cool stuff to do your cool things. Dude, when I started Protonic, like, it was like Radio Shack and Fry's Electronics, right? Which is crazy because it's like,
They're both dead.
yeah, age yourself by like saying two store names. Like when Nope had a Fry's Electronics
Rocky
in
Rococo.
it, you know,
Yeah.
right, exactly. When Nope had a Fry's Electronics in there, I was like, hell yeah, that's awesome. But that was it, right? Because it's the sort of thing that's a cultural signifier that, of course, he would be getting this stuff from those places, because that's the thing that you could do then and would do if you had any desire for anything remotely countercultural. But yeah, the FCC like chasing after them again with the FCC helicopter, crazy, which leads to this whole like, well, and they're gonna like arrest him, you know, but okay, but like it surprisingly works considering how thin the logic is for like how they get from point A to point B. Like,
Yeah.
if you stop and think about it, it's like, there must be an easier way to just arrest a kid. He's just a kid in a Jeep getting driven around by his girlfriend. Like, what are you gonna call it? Like special forces? Like, what are you doing
Right.
here?
Yeah. Well, those like box trucks or whatever, not box trucks, but the vans that would now be used for food trucks.
Right.
Those vans aren't maneuverable.
No.
So that's how they can keep getting away, I guess.
Yeah, sure. And again, good Jeep representation, right? I guess pump up the volume. Brought to you by Jeep.
And if I'm
and Wild Cherry Diet Pepsi.
if I'm Christian Slater, I might not go like tell my new girlfriend / crime partner, drive into the heart of the FCC.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so throwing to the next clip, we asked what it was about Pump Up the Volume that you thought appealed to your younger self.
I'm sure a lot of it had to do with just the music as an act of rebellion, of definition. For me, it was very important to define who I was, and that was in contrast to what was around me, which was, you know, largely vague intolerance towards minorities and casual sexism and just redneck behavior. And the idea of there being someone that was providing an alternate method of being, that was always appealing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And not even as like, hey, here's this fantastical escape, but like, hey, here's something that, you know, this dude's doing something cool. Oh, cool.
Right.
That's worth doing. And I mean, we would do things like, you know, we'd make our own comic books, make our own zines, whatever, things along those lines, which all just sounds so adorable now, because now everybody's like, that's what social media, that you just make content for these companies now, and that's what you do.
Right. At least you weren't making it for companies, though.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You were making it for your own edification.
I mean, we even had a short-lived public access TV show that we were trying to be like our equivalent of. At the time, we probably would have said like Kids in the Hall, but it was ended to be more like Mr. Show, but you know, by suburban kids.
And this was in Modesto?
Yes.
Okay.
Public access, everybody. Public access TV. Yeah.
So, do you feel now that this was as centrally concerned with music as an act of rebellion?
Not as much as I remembered. And again, because most of the things is just the, you know, it's like self-actualization, right? The key moment for me is the they think you're moody, make them think you're crazy line, which, by the way, I inadvertently paraphrased on one of the songs on the new record without realizing it. I realized that like when I was like, oh wait, is that? It's not exactly the same, but it's a line that's in there. But it's such a look. Kids, like when you're younger, you feel emotions very strongly, like in a way that we almost can't conceive of as adults. That you feel things, and it's the world breaking apart, and volcanoes exploding, and earthquakes, and you're looking at it like, what are they so mad about? You know, like I can't imagine being that worked up about anything ever.
Or just the perception of ignorance and at that time, Christian Slater like is so demonstrably like angry and also like aware of what's going on. When in essence, like you're 17, dude.
Right.
Like you don't fucking know anything.
You know nothing.
Like how?
Jon Snow.
Yeah. Like you know nothing, Mark Hunter. But like.
But I think
again,
the things he hits on, though, the things he is hitting on is like, well, he's not wrong, right? Like, and I could see where it would resonate with me as far as like feeling like I'm surrounded by like people that not only share my interests, but they don't share my values. I'm surrounded by intolerance, surrounded by like idiots that are enemies of knowledge and just everything that I despise. That, you know, again, something a lot of young people feel, but I think he articulates a lot of that without providing a single prescriptive solution to any part of it, to be clear. But like that I think that's, sorry, Sean, please take over. But that's kind of my take on it.
I think it's telling that we don't have, you know, outside of some either sympathetic teachers like Ellen Green or like the authority in this movie, we don't have this show being listened to like on the docks, right? Or like at the bar. We don't have adults who are like outside of the high school paradigm, like giving this any time or oxygen in the room. This he is speaking to his peers, and like I would assume like if I had something similar, there was a kid that like felt like he was, I you know, empathizing with me, and had this kind of cool platform. Like yeah, I would probably drive out to a field too and listen to it.
And it's also so wild that this is predictive of podcasting, right?
Very much.
Like Hard Harry would have like all the people you mentioned, the dock workers and like whatever. But well, actually, I think Hard Harry brings up a lot of important points. And it's like, no, well, he's not a scholar. I mean, he's just like a dude ranting into a microphone, which now we look at completely differently because that kind of thing has been weaponized and commodified into, you know, or atomized media system. But at the time, in 1990, no. Like again, you have the talk radio, right? This is probably the closest example you can see of that being used where it can radicalize people, and it just wasn't even something anybody thought of. Like it hadn't happened culturally yet. But that's basically what it is you know, it's you're narrow casting to a smaller audience, and then sometimes that stuff breaks big, sometimes it doesn't, and it's just interesting to me how wrong I was about thinking that the focus was on like, oh yeah, music's the way. No, not at all. It's just like a background for, you know, like what? It's a podcast, and you have the popular cheerleader like finding value in like the message he's giving, even though it's like you're clearly not the intended audience for this, and how she acts out. Okay, like don't put all that stuff in the microwave. That's gonna explode. That's a bad idea. Right. But like basically. Within the context of the school, there being a cross-section of the students finding value in the message that wasn't even the intended audience of it, I think is interesting. I think that's interesting, and that's predictive of future trends.
So obviously Mark is essentially a podcaster pre-podcast. He reads letters submitted via snail mail from his audience, essentially social media before social media.
Right. The comment section.
Obviously, you were obviously creating things and putting them out there as a teen, but you're also probably just as prolific a creator as you were then.
Yeah.
Do you think you're more like Mark Hunter now than you were as a kid watching this?
Oh, man. So that's interesting because he's a different person by the end than he is at the beginning. Like by the end, he realizes he does have some degree of responsibility to, if not provide answers to questions, to help people because he's like been giving them hope in a weird way. And it's very much centered on this injustice happening within the school, which is uncovered mostly thanks to, what's her face? Little Shop of Horrors.
Jan Emerson, Ellen Green.
Right. So mostly because of that, but it ends. It's kind of a hopeful message at the end because, like, spoiler alert, everybody. Everyone's starting their own radio show now, and like everybody is like starting their own podcast, right? It's like the Minutemen thing of now go start your own band, right? And I probably found that very encouraging at the time, because the idea was like, hey, you can do this. You can just make your own thing, and maybe it'll strike big, maybe it won't, but it's worth doing for the doing of it. Like, and that was tying into my emerging punk rock sensibility of, as I got more and more into these bands, they were just all just doing their own thing, and none of them like sounded like each other, but they were creating their own worlds. They were creating their own worlds. Huge appeal to me. Now I can just, that's what I do. I do that all the time. I do it in multiple mediums, multiple forms, and I can just acknowledge that. But the idea is, at the time, as a kid, that would have seemed like sorcery. Because we just didn't have the tools that everyone has now. I'm constantly surprised by younger generations that just all they do is they just react within these walled garden mediums, and it's like react culture. It's like, well, you don't need to do that. You can just create your own, like, you have everything you need to create your own thing. But that concept doesn't even occur. They don't even know how.
Right.
And that's horrifying to me. They're like, no, just do it. Just do it right now. It doesn't matter if you don't have the clout. That comes later, and that's not important. Like, well, if I need to react to these things. If I don't react to these things, then people won't follow me and blah, blah, blah. No, you got this backwards. This is... and that is so horrifying because it shows how absolutely cultural commodification through corporate entities has become that, like, the idea of there being DIY has and rebellion is like, no, this is how you rebel. You go on this platform and use these hashtags. You kidding me? No.
Yeah.
It should be messy. It should be messy, potentially ugly, chaotic, and done by people that have no idea what they're doing until they do. And that's sort of my takeaway with that, right? And I think it's actually shockingly effective because of that. Yeah. But I was on the ride the whole time where I'm like, man, I just forgot how much of this is just like simulated masturbation noises. It's like I just mentally redacted. That part wasn't important to me, I guess. I don't know. But
now, how did you know how to even get on public access?
Again, just found out. Just like I think we went to the we looked in the phone book,
found an
address, went to the address, talked to like a baffled board functionary. Like, how do we get a show? And like, you have to sign this paper and do this thing, and your parents have to. Okay, fine, and it was, and we just did it. The same way I'm an ordained minister, which I forget about all the time. And it was the same thing.
Me too, buddy.
The Universal Life Church had an office in Modesto, and my friend Clay, the same guy, started playing music with. It's like, hey, you want to get ordained today? I'm like, sure. And we walked.
How many weddings have you done?
None. I was going to do one, and
but you're ready.
I was like, hell yes, I am ready to do this. Put me in coach. I'm ready to play. And I haven't yet. Still available, by the way. And I will do it in full show outfit if you feel so inclined. So
I'm working toward my free sandwich. I'm at 4 punches right now on my card.
Nice. That's awesome. Congratulations, man.
But
again, it's just that DIY.
Peace be with you.
And also with you. It's that DIY spirit, right? It's that spirit of just like, nobody's going to stop me from doing this. I'm just going to do it. Like, and I think that's. Look, the story of, and I'm at the tail end of Gen X, but the story of Gen X has never been told accurately and will never be told accurately. But I think the ability to just make your own world, whether it be like radio shows, scenes, comic books, like bands, whatever it happens to be, it's something that I think that is very important generationally to a lot of us. And it sucks to see that get lost. When it's the fish in the river, and they're being like, oh yeah, water's going this way today. What is water? It's that kind of thing. And is that going to be younger folks' lessons from watching Pump the Volume? No, they're gonna be like, no, he's a dumb edgelord. Like, okay, well. Yes, but you have to understand that the PMRC was like a huge thing at the time, and that people were literally banning records. And like, you have to, and there's like
thanks, Tipper.
I know, right? And there's just no interest in the context of any of that. And if there is, it's completely misunderstood.
Right. I mean, that's why Ice-T's on the soundtrack.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Sam Esmail inserted reference to Pump Up the Volume in Mr. Robot. Kurt Cobain's tongue-in-cheek singing of the chorus of Get Together.
Christian Slater's
and
in
his
Mr.
return to
Robot.
Pissings.
You know, I mean,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and I'm sure that's not an accident.
But the Get Together thing in Territorial Pissings is probably a nod to this as well.
Sure.
On rewatch, did you see anything done in the film that reminded you of something you did in the past, or maybe cribbed as a teen? Moving past the unintentional entry on your new record.
Yeah, right, sure. I think, well, going back to Leonard Cohen, like, I am always been very careful about having intro music. And then, and for Protonic Reversal, I think first 30 episodes, I had a different song, but I like really labored about what to pick. And then I ended up just using one of my own songs because I was like, oh, this sums up everything I want to say right here. And I'll just throw in stuff that has been said on the show at this point. But before that happened, I always looked at it like, okay, you're setting a mood.
Yeah.
You're setting a mood and sometimes that can be like what you're up against and so on and so on. But I probably got that from this movie, honestly, because I'm trying to think about it and like, I don't know, is the Howard Stern theme song like important? No, not really. Yeah. Not to me anyway. Like I'm trying to think of like other media and I think that's something that, and now people are just like, oh, just boom, right in, right? Like just right in, no anything. And I still like the theme song as a level set, and I probably got that from this, just because I like that song so much. And I knew Everybody Knows before I ever went back and listened to like Suzanne and So Long Marianne and all
Sure.
the old stuff. And I was devastated when I got the record. I was like, oh, there's like 2 good songs on this. And one of them is badass, but like,
yeah,
it's not what I
do
thought it
think
would be.
With time, I've definitely warmed to the record a lot.
Me too. But at the time, I was
but it was the production was such a hurdle for me, to get over, and I feel like that's probably the case for a lot of people, especially a lot of people who wouldn't have been coming to "I'm Your Man." That's the record it's on, right?
Well, and it is, yeah.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine that. And props to Kathy. What was her last name again?
Kathy Nelson.
Kathy
but
Nelson.
This is actually, Everybody Knows was Allan Moyle's very specific.
He wanted that.
That
okay.
was his. Because he's from Quebec, so he's a huge.
He's a Cohen fan. But it could have been "Don't Go Home with Your Heart On," too.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like he's happy, Harry Hard On. So and that song goes as well. Huge influence on Nick Cave. But God, it's the music choice here, it matters so much, and so like that achieved a certain degree of importance within my mind. I guess was an influence if you stop and think about it, which is crazy because I haven't thought about this movie in a very long time.
Right. So throwing to the next clip, you were asked what memories stick out to you the most about.
Okay, let's see. I don't remember what I said. Great. I'm as much in suspense as anybody. I think it's how I learned what the FCC is.
Okay.
I don't think I had a real idea of like what that was before that. And I'm not sure if I had like a good idea of it, but I'm not sure I even like knew it existed before that.
Sure.
I was like, oh, you can't just make a radio station and just that's what you're doing. No,
right.
People gonna be mad at you about that? Oh, okay.
We need conflict in a movie.
Right. And I remember, the FCC is like the heavy, but I don't remember like how or why, if somebody snitches or what. I don't remember anything about how it got there. And I also might be equating some of the stuff with Heathers too, which I love and I've seen many times since then.
Which is very close to this. What's a year or two?
Yeah.
Josh.
Yeah, this is 90 and Heathers is what, 88 or 89?
Right.
It's close. It's very close.
And it's crazy because I've seen like Heathers probably like 4 or 5 times since then. Hell, we talked to the director of moving Extravaganza. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
But again, I Pump Up the Volume is just one of those ones that like I'm pretty sure it's a good movie. I don't know. It was great for me at the time. It was it was important. Nice. Totally did not remember the whole school plot at all. Like, why are they chasing him? I don't know. Because they hate freedom.
Yeah. Were you surprised at how long it took for the FCC to get involved?
Yeah, I think so. But again, I definitely didn't know what the FCC was before this movie. That's for sure. But like, I guess it depends on how, because they're driving to the field for the broadcast. Like, how far does this broadcast go? Like, I don't even know like what I know what they are now, but I don't know what they were at the time, because there was a whole low power radio movement in the late 90s and early 2000s too. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. It's like literally the plot of the movie. That like whatever. I guess something was happening at the school.
Yeah. Did you think
Like,
it was
it didn't
strange that
matter
you
why
memory
he was
hold
mad at
the
the school.
administration thing?
What's that?
Did you feel like it was strange that you had memory hold the school administration plot?
I guess so, but it's also, I guess it shows that the inciting incident doesn't necessarily matter so much as the message, is what I would characterize that as.
Now,
it's
had you
odious,
conflated,
and I think it's the fact it's based on
100%.
real life events is like, Jesus
horrifying.
Christ,
And not even in America. Like that's
the most surprising thing about the entire movie.
Now, had you conflated any of the action in Heathers with Pump Up the Volume, or had you managed?
I remembered there was like a suicide in both of them. That's probably the only thing, and that Christian Slater was in both of them, and that I had a huge crush on the female lead, and that's about it.
Okay.
A huge crush on the female brunette.
Yeah, the female.
Now, with
which
no judgment,
she was not a natural brunette in this movie.
That's right. She died. She dyed her hair for the role, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like
Mathis
a weird,
is-
like black red or something.
Yeah.
You know,
she's like strawberry blonde or something.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
word, okay.
They were dating at the time. BT Dubs, Slater and Mathis were.
Nice.
Okay.
Now, without any judgment coming from this corner, you've watched Heathers many times since you've last seen this, but you qualified this as important to your younger self. If these are the two seminal young Christian Slater films, no offense to Gleam in the Cube or Cuffs,
Cuffs.
how do you feel like this compares
No, all
to
offenses.
Heathers?
No, okay. Yeah. Okay. So overall, right? Good. It's good. I think Heathers is probably the better movie. But Heathers works on different levels, and they're doing different things. I think there is a lot for newer audiences to love with it, but I think certain things would be harder for some folks to overcome, especially if they're sensitive towards what has now become, as the comment section literally is the president of this country now. It's, maybe seems like a little less rebellious and more just obnoxious. They're going to hear the obnoxious and not the rebellion again, because absent of context, it's how would you not?
So the reason that Pump Up the Volume has sort of fallen by the wayside in terms of people being able to see it likely traces its origins to New Lines being bought out by TBS in '94, which has obviously since fallen under the control of Warner Brothers, who love to not release things.
Yeah.
The last time this was physically released was for just a bare bones DVD.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Which would have been in the 90s. And it's never been available on a streaming platform, even as VOD, likely owing to the music rights needing to be relicensed.
AKA the WKRP scenario. Sure.
Yes. Yeah. So, or Northern Exposure.
Yeah.
And it was the reason why Homicide was unavailable for so long.
That's right. Yeah.
But everyone, you can still find this on archive.org. I think the spirit of this film would want you to find it on archive.org. I'll have the links in the show notes. But you can also just search for this movie name and archive.org and put the year in, I guess. You'll find it.
Hypothetically.
Yeah, hypothetically.
At the time of this recording.
Yeah. The internet might not exist anymore when we drop these.
Jesus Christ.
All right, so thrown to the last clip here. Yeah. Thrown to the last clip after a bunch of talk about Christian Slater, Gleam in the Cube, and Sean's childhood apartment building's courtyard.
If you guys ever do Gleam in the Cube, you're gonna have to reference this episode, because I feel like we talked about it for quite a long time.
We 100% will.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's inescapable.
It's the most I've ever thought about it too, to be clear. But.
Yeah. But we asked you what you expected upon your return to Pump Up the Volume, and you said.
Well, I expect to find Christian Slater, who is in his peak trying to be young Jack Nicholson era here, probably more amusing than badass, I would say.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued for like why. I don't know why he's doing the pirate radio. I have no idea why he's doing it. And I don't remember. I don't think it was important to me at the time, but I'm interested in the motivations and how that all plays out. And yeah, like I remember, I was like, oh, he's so philosophical. And like I'm sure everything he says is gonna be like idiot now, but like, but maybe some of it holds up. I don't know. It could be like fair is fair, right? Fair is fair. How do you argue against that?
You can't.
Yeah. How are you gonna argue against a woman who wants to go crazy on you? Oh, good point. The heart's crazy on you is what I was referencing there, by the way. But yeah, it's a good point. How do you argue against that? Okay, I didn't remember the Clark Kent Superman thing, right? I didn't remember that he had confidence problems at all somehow. And that like he was only able really to articulate himself and be his best self when he was in front of the microphone. Which I feel like is a big part of the movie, but for some reason I didn't retain literally any of that.
What maybe just one note on the Clark Kent stuff. Like I'm assuming that he's wearing glasses because he needs to.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right?
Good point.
Like
yeah.
Mark Hunter wears glasses, right? Like you
Hard Harry doesn't.
You could still wear glasses in your basement where no one sees you.
Right.
Because you kind of want to be able to see all the shit that you're doing with your console and your tapes and like levels. It is kind of funny, and one thing that like Nicholson would never do is like to play the diminutive, to like even how Christian Slater comports himself physically.
His physical presence, yes.
Yeah, is really good for an actor that young.
Yeah.
That he's hunched. He's just a guy that like, you'd never really notice in your high school. You have to add like plaid to him or, some houndstooth or whatever the weird costume direction that they chose to portray the Clark Kent Mark Hunter. Whereas like when he goes down to that basement, he has the cool wardrobe.
Yeah.
We never see him wearing the same thing.
He might even take off his shirt.
Right.
Fucking he might even crack a beer, which again is like something that we
we
haven't talked about, but like
he didn't crack a beer though. It was a Diet Pepsi.
He did grab a beer at one point earlier in the movie, though. Like out of the first
no,
one, right?
no, that's a wild cherry Diet Pepsi.
Oh, is it really? Oh, wow.
His dad just thinks it's a beer.
Yeah, he said it's a beer. He just plays along with it, but it's a wild cherry Diet Pepsi.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I checked the can. Yeah, I did a whole deep dive.
Zoom and enhance.
Yeah, can we enhance further? But yeah, like the whole like I need to be by myself, right? I can't talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I can only talk this way, and this way makes me feel good. And like bridging that divide, kind of near the end of the movie, was an interesting development. It is kind of funny that as he's being hauled away, for Guantanamo at the end there, that the student body
too soon, man, too soon.
that the student body is not chanting Mark.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
They're chanting Harry.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And they've put that together that this is Harry. Like there's some kids probably in that field who don't know who Mark Hunter is.
Totally. But the idea, so it has become something where like the idea of Hard Harry has become its own, it's achieved its own momentum. It's achieved its own notoriety. It's achieved
its cult status. Yeah.
Symbols. It's a symbol. Right. And so henceforth, why you hear like the avalanche of knockoff of radio shows, which I'm sure are all fantastic, immediately afterwards. But like, that's the idea is like, he started this fire, he started this boulder rolling down the hill, but it's not about him. It's about the deeds and the actions and what it can mean for everyone in their personal journey, which I think is fantastic. It's a lot of heavy lifting for like a 3-minute sequence, but
oh yeah,
but I think it actually is very effective. Even though, like the ending is, it's a bit abrupt after like everything that's going on. But I was like, oh, okay, no, I get it. Like it's an aesthetic choice. Like, and I think that works. I think it works.
Yeah.
I didn't even remember how it ended. Really, I remember they eventually busted him. I didn't remember like the other shows copying up. That was which is like kind of important, frankly. But.
Yeah. Where did you come down on Slater's performance? Was it closer to amusing or badass?
I mean, there was some stuff that was very silly, and there was some stuff that I was like, oh, that's good. That's like, I don't think he never gives any good advice, ever.
Yeah, and it's very unspecific.
It's super unspecific. But it's funny because it's like, oh, I could see being inspired by the completely vague notion here and putting your own meaning into it. That I think it works as. What's rebel without a cause, right?
Right.
Like, why has that worked generationally over and over and over again? There's not a lot of specificity to that either. Like, it's
like Mark Hunter, like this whole movie and the whole message here from Mark Hunter and Pump Up the Volume is somewhere between like unspecific, hey, let's go crazy Cleveland from Major League, right? Let's hear you out there, and like, let's get loud. And then like the other spectrum, or the other end of the spectrum, would be like Tyler Durden's very specific agenda of this is what we are going to do, right? Like Pump Up the Volume is somewhere in the middle of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And like, if Mark Hunter is more worldly, if Mark Hunter is, say, 20 years older, I think we get the structure of what he's trying to implement, rather than just that very strange montage of like, the microwave, like,
right,
destructions and God.
What does she do? She's just like saying random stuff and like flipping everyone off.
And when she flips out at like outside in the press scrum, painful.
It was like,
that was pretty cringy.
What are you doing?
Can you imagine like watching that on news?
I felt very bad for her.
Yeah.
I felt really bad for her, and of course, like,
but the character wouldn't know like how to articulate her thoughts.
Sure,
right?
So... but like, I just watching that back, I'm sure she can't.
Yeah,
I'm sure she probably can't watch this movie, sadly.
And we have a very strange, like, the only interaction between kind of the idyllic woman that Mark Hunter wants and the one that he ends up with is this very quick, like, at the field, hey, Paige.
Yeah.
Nice. Thumbs up, like double thumbs up. Like, that's really their only exchange.
That's it.
Yeah. That was
She's this movie's Diane Court.
Diane Court has so much more to say, right? And like a much
100%.
But
she also knows nothing about what she's saying.
And a much better actor, though. I mean,
yeah,
this Paige actress, God love her, is not Ione Skye.
No. Now, as one of 3 grizzled men in their 40s, presently talking on a microphone about a teen movie, using "Fair is Fair" from
Grizzled.
The Legend of Billie Jean.
I was gonna say grizzled. Come on, dude. Like,
well,
physician
like,
heal thyself.
I say spiritually, at least.
Yeah, okay, spiritually. Real quick, I would say it's the rare time. By the way, I would potentially be okay if a Cobra Kai kind of thing happened, where you see Christian Slater like now, and he's like, a famous podcaster or something that is like, I can't believe I was, that's stupid. Like, but you would have to give it some real humanity and like modern context. And I don't think that would be terrible.
Oh yeah, no, it could work. But like using "Fair is Fair" from The Legend of Billie Jean as a measuring stick for how this ages.
Right.
How did the philosophizing play to you now?
Yeah, because it's like, okay, like talk hard is like the tagline, right? And it's like, okay, what does that mean? And the idea is, again, contextually, it is Tipper Gore and company were trying to make things as sanitized as possible. Yeah. They were trying to make everything safe.
That's pretty crucial to understand, like what's going on largely in culture right at this time. Right. Is they're going out and like censoring, trying to ban music. That's why we have the explicit lyrics tags on music now.
Yeah, people don't even understand what that is now, but yeah.
But
you got to think, the whole revolution of talk, right? Like, again, referencing Stern, like he was certainly around in broadcasting earlier in the 80s, but like comes to be this cultural explosion that spawns leagues of unlistenably bad imitators that and basically single-handedly, don't blame him for it, starts the whole morning zoo format, which is one of the worst things culturally, I think, in my generation. But again, this whole revolution of talk thing actually did happen, and I think it's interesting to have it be agendaless, much like the Democratic Party. Lit them up. And I think that reads as problematic now, but you have to understand where it was. If you were looking at the oppression of boomer censorship to everything and applying objective moral standings to everything, that I think that still gets over, but I don't think the messaging works as well for a younger audience, because they're not going to, again, they're going to look at it in the context of what that has now become, which has now become, weaponized. I'm just asking questions, like edgelordy stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed result, I guess. I think some of it works really well, and I think some of it's just, you're only going to hear how that was weaponized by shameless, awful people for their own purposes.
Right, 100%. So you surmise that there might be some weird anachronisms or relics of a bygone era in the film that would be of interest. Did this bear any fruit for you?
So much dick-related humor, man. There's so, like, it's too much. Like, it must have felt like too much at the time, and that was the point. But like, oh my god, we get it. You stroke it. Like, okay.
But also, this is he doesn't understand. He can't hear his audience, right?
Sure.
So he doesn't know how it's going over.
Right.
Really. But like, he's taking a big risk that, like,
sure,
simulated masturbation is like hysterical.
He has no audience to base it off of. You're right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
And again, that's the era of not knowing your audience, not having the comment section, which like, great, by the way. I'd love not to have a comment section.
I mean, really, the only thing I guess that he does have a little bit of that validation in him
that he's getting
the letters.
And, well, he's getting letters.
He's getting letters.
Uh-huh.
But also, like, for him to hear himself in that scene too.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, Jesus Christ, like, am I found out? Or like, no, like, he's...
They're trading tapes.
Popular.
Yeah, they're like kids, like the jock kids, are, who, again, props to the writing to not have them be like generic Flash Thompson style bullies where they hate him and they love Harry. But yeah, they're trading tapes, which was a thing, people. That was.
And hats off to the kid who's like, I'm going to tape something that's completely free,
right,
and everyone has access to, and then
monetize,
but they're not bothering to tape,
right? Yeah.
And $5 in 1990 is
a lot of fucking money,
is above the minimum wage.
Word, yeah.
So, like,
comfortably above the minimum wage.
I mean,
maybe $15-20 worth of bootleg there.
Yeah. I mean, and look, same thing. I remember there was before they put out like the CDs and stuff. Like, I knew a kid that like was taping Jerky Boys bits, right? Like, oh, you gotta hear, it's amazing, like. I was like, all right, great. I'll pay $5 for that.
But at least with the Jerky Boys bits, like, he had to obtain that source material.
Yeah.
Like, he probably had to pay for it, or whatever. Like, this is something that's going out on
literally taping it out on like pirate radio. Yeah.
I mean,
American ingenuity.
Good hustle, kid.
Yeah, good hustle.
So you were both curious as to how the comedy would still play. Did it still work for you two?
I don't think of this movie as a comedy. So, like, I don't know what that.
Did you think of it as a comedy before, though?
I think I thought it was a little funnier than it was in my memory, but maybe that was just the maybe that was just the simulated masturbation. I don't know. Like,
sure.
It's not really a comedy at all.
Yeah,
is that surprising to you?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that he had more of a, and again, we bring up Lenny Bruce not only because somebody in this movie dated him, but also because of the book that we see in this movie. I thought that he was like continuously more comedic in his rants.
Yeah.
But like kind of once we turn, well, like again, we'll get the surprise of how early the suicide comes in. We lose a little bit of that levity in his, kind of like, not to equate these movies too closely, but the Eric Bogosian
Talk radio.
talk radio stuff.
Yeah, I think I had memory of, these insightful epithets and, crouched in sardonic humor. Like, and it's like, well, not really. I mean,
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, there are elements of that, but it's
Some of
not
it.
it's not as prominent as I remembered either. Like,
And I think
I
that's
was
what-
surprised at how much more dramatic this is than comedic.
Yeah, and I think that's it's interesting that I like read that into it as a memory when that's the kind of thing that, again, giving credit for like the message, how it made you feel versus the text of the thing, right?
Yeah.
And so like if I saw this for the first time today, would I feel the same way? No, of course not.
Sure.
I'm a mid-40s rock and roll musician. It's not gonna hit the same,
Right. So
Not
moving
high
on
school.
to picking up
High
the
school.
scraps.
Jeez, that's 100,000 years ago. Anyway, what?
Yeah. So moving on to picking up the scraps.
Mhm.
Is there anything we've missed that anybody wants to talk about?
Let's see. We talked about them weeding out the undesirables, right? The wearing only a cock ring. Good line. That was very funny to me. I was like, amazing.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And especially when you get the reveal, like he read about it in a magazine or
Right. Doesn't
whatever.
even know what it is.
He doesn't even know what one looks like.
Amazing.
Yeah.
For me, I think the big turning point in this movie, we haven't talked about it, is very telling of the time, that the gears do not really go fully in motion against Mark Hunter until he has a heart-to-heart with a gay kid.
Oh.
Because
Yeah,
that's
man.
where he's having a real sympathetic moment with this kid.
Yeah.
And like, he's talking about going up there and like, we were fooling around. And then you see that real like fucking like
19 parents are
stick
called into the
yeah, and they're
police,
calling
yeah.
the cops.
Yeah.
And there's like that teacher with the glasses who like clutches his pearls and kind of stands
Deaver,
up.
the
and-
guidance counselor.
yeah, stands up like, this is enough is enough. And I think it's actually like a really lovely little moment. Like Slater's like extremely
Open and sympathetic.
just touched, and
Yeah.
it and again, it's like a kid killing themselves because they can't take it anymore is
Well,
less
that
of,
kid was also written to be gay, and then that was excised from the script.
sure, yeah. I think it's better this way, that we don't have two characters who are kind of coming out and pouring
Yeah.
their hearts out to Mark that he's gay. But boy, he comes as close to a Dan Savage "It Gets Better" moment.
You're right. Yeah, it's right. Knocking on
Then-
the door, practically. Yeah.
Like I was almost waiting for him to say that, right?
Yeah.
Like
Fuck. Yeah.
we have that line of him trying to kind of like walk back here he says it can't get any worse, it can only get better, right? He does say that at some point to his audience, and I'm like, oh baby, like
Right.
in 1990 I wish you were right.
I know.
But I do think like that. Yeah, I think that's a really kind of telling moment in the screenplay of like what we feel the establishment's bridge too far is, and that
Well,
it's
and
like,
also how the audience reacts to it is not like with any derision at all for the kid who has written the letter to be called. It's the audience reaction is also like pretty much wholly sympathetic. Even like Maz Mazzilli, the Lost Boys outcast.
peroxide
Yeah,
dye
yeah.
job. Yeah.
Even he is like pretty sympathetic to this character who's calling, or to this gay kid. Like the reaction of the kids shockingly
empathetic and understanding. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But it's because it's a medium.
Like, that's a choice.
But it's a medium. Yeah, right. And it shows the power of the medium too, right? It's connecting people that would have nothing to do with each other. And I think it's very successful. I didn't even think about that, Sean. That's actually huge.
Yeah.
Huge, especially for the time. I mean, Christ, think
right, because you see Reagan and Gorbachev on the wall on a poster behind Deaver like when he's on the call-in line, the bionic call-in line. When he's on that, like there's Reagan and Gorbachev on the fucking wall behind him.
Yeah.
Like it's a very clear message that, like, you know, the Reagan sort of evangelical wing of the Republican Party,
which is like still
is out to get them.
It's not even like an anachronism. It's still there. Like, you know, it's like
and they're ramping it back up.
Right, exactly. Okay, so my point is going to seem hilarious in comparison to that one, but I love it won't stop there in the speaker system. It's just sort of like the technological. I lost my mind at hearing that.
Right.
Like, it won't stop there in the speaker system. It's like technology has come so far. It was adorable. I like that scene a lot. I think everything decent has been done and turned into a theme park. Great line. That's something that I don't even know. Theme park is being too generous at this point. Everything's decent has been turned into a Dollar General. You know, I don't even know what it would be now, but I that line, good sentiment, and I'm not sure. I don't think I got it from there, but there's definitely a similar-ish line in another one of my songs from like years ago. Let's celebrate now before it's turned into a monument is the line, but it's like the same principle, right?
Sure. So we haven't really talked about Allan Moyle, so I'll dig into him for a second. So his first movie, or his movie prior to this, he'd done one other one before that. But his movie prior to this was Times Square. And he had that kind of infamously taken from him in post-production by the studio. They recut it. The producer recut it to shoehorn music to chase double album soundtrack money and to excise the more overt lesbian content from that rock and roll teen love story. And like the actresses are 13 and 15 of that. But he had retreated to just writing screenplays. And then he had like a 45-page draft of this that SE Entertainment put into development and coaxed him into directing. And he, this is kind of the only movie of his that he mostly gets to do what he wants. Two movies after this is Empire Records, which is very much treading the same territory, but Empire Records, I had a conversation with Ethan Embry on X, Twitter, a few months ago, and I was like, yeah, there's clearly like a different movie that was intended, and he was like, oh yeah, the script was way different, and then, you know, the studio fucked with that too, and, you know, it was not a PG-13 movie. It was much more adult. There was a lot darker shit going on, and that all got excised, and we're left with what we have. You know, kind of
which I remember being so mad. I actually worked at Tower Records when that movie came out, and I was like, come on. Come on, it's not like although I would not have been mad if Liv Tyler or Renee Zellweger in 1985 were working at my Tower Records, but
no one would have been upset with that.
About that. But it's mid is probably the most
right, but it like clearly wasn't.
Well, it
like
was
that was all
something
studio
more.
interference.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is basically the one that like he got to do it the way he wanted to do it. This is kind of
for the
saying.
most part.
Okay.
Yeah. There. I mean, he had certain points. The suicide couldn't be gay kid. But that was more or less the biggest, from what I can surmise, the biggest compromise that he had to make. Yeah.
All right.
So, any more scraps, or should we move on to?
Yeah, I'll just skip. I mean, we haven't really talked too much about the head of the FCC here, the
Sure.
the kind of Texas billionaire, like
Yeah,
oil man
James
performance. Yeah, kind of a weird performance on his part. But just to shout out the line about when they think they've zeroed in on Christian Slater. He has the great line, you know, we'll catch up with him in, whatever. We're on our way to catch up with him now. Let's see how hard he is then. I had to pause and write that line down and then pace my apartment for a second. I know I didn't know when it was going to come up, but I had to bring that line and give it a little bit of a spotlight.
So, moving on to major gripes, starting with Conan. What was your biggest gripe with the film this go around?
I'm ipso facto. Sean made the point. I'm gonna steal it. It would be cool to see him discovering this music. Like it wouldn't take that long. 2-minute scenes, all you need, right? Like that's.
Yep.
I think that is. It's not a lot to ask for.
Yeah, the runtime's not out of control.
Right.
It's an hour 40.
Yeah.
You could absolutely have 2-3 more minutes, and have that in here.
As a adult human being, too, it's like it's too much of the simulated masturbation. I get it. Like one less scene of that would have been fine. Cut that out. Show him like Striley talking about the Pixies to like the record store clerk. Oh, well, it's a different version.
Sure.
It's not on the
Sure.
Great.
Yeah, and hand in hand with Conan here, I'll leapfrog off that. Like I just don't see girls reacting that way to it. Like girls give no fucks about the jerky boys, right? Like there are definitely paths of humor that do not work for everybody, and to see like these women in his class like kind of squealing with delight, I think is actually like it sends a really bad message for all the young men who are watching this movie about what comedic path to take.
It's not gonna land the way you think, son.
No, it does not work. But yeah, like overall gripes, like I have, a little, I want a little bit more, I want some more content, right? I want to see Mark and kind of his exploration of who he is in the real world outside of school. Even going to a concert or something like that. Like, anything just to kind of show him.
I think we're meant to think that this is such a backwater town, though, that
nothing's happening.
There wouldn't be right. Yeah,
which was relatable.
I mean, I think it's. Yeah,
I could have used a little less horniness in the dad too, but whatever.
It went on at least 2 lines too long. We get it. All right, come on, enough.
We get it. Yeah. Even like let's have it be done when they close his door.
Yeah.
We don't need the scene upstairs with them, like basically in estrus. Like almost turned on by their son's.
Yeah, not cool, man. Yeah.
Girlfriend being there, or like, I don't know, very weird.
We don't need to be told that she's hot. We know she's hot. It's okay. We don't need an age inappropriate man commenting on it.
Yeah, we already have kind of a little bit of that with Paige's dad.
Oh yeah.
My major gripe would be, I think we need about 15 more minutes of masturbation simulation.
He wants more, but have you seen the director's cut? He put in more afterwards. Yeah.
Conan, have you heard this podcast? It's all I have to deal with.
It's a surprising deleted scene. It's 15 minutes long. It's Lynchian, some might say. It goes on for so long.
And
he's
like
on medication.
Sorry. If I have one gripe, there's a line where we say, like, everywhere we look, we're getting butt surfed by the system. Which I've never heard that phrase. I don't know why. With a hard
why is that
R on this movie, we have to use the word butt surfed. But okay.
My major actual gripe is that this is set in Arizona, the land of Barry Goldwater, and they're at Hubert H. Humphrey High School. That would never fucking happen.
Oh yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a Robert E. Lee high school up here in like Harlem.
Right.
Yeah. So moving on to fix this movie for today, how would we fix this for a modern audience?
I think all you have to do is dial back some of the what is now quantified as edgelord stuff, like at least 40%, which is not hard to do.
Right.
And you can rewrite 2 or 3 scenes and not even like change the context of what he's doing, but say how he's saying it, and you're good. I think there should be some context about what the PMRC is and what is like rebelling against. I think you can't get away with not showing that unless it's something that is coming out around this time. But I think, you don't need to go crazy with it. You can just have some establishing shots of like the news or something talking about, easy. You can add on 3 extra minutes along with, him in the record store.
I think, unfortunately, as we kind of end this movie, we have these people jumping on and doing their own shows. And there is that joke of like, no, everybody has a podcast now.
Yeah.
But like, unfortunately, we're living in the dark timeline where there is no accountability to what people say on a lot of these podcasts. And we see, not to be
You can platform white supremacists and get a $250 million deal with Spotify.
Yep.
You can perhaps change elections with your rhetoric.
And that's the world that we live in now, which was not
and that's
possible.
the world we live in now, which is so unforeseen at that time. But essentially Mark Hunter grew up to become, someone capable of altering the world and changing people's lives in a negative way in one timeline, right? Now, this Mark Hunter would seemingly, with what he's talking about in this movie, if he was around today, is going to be like a eat the rich type of kid and have that type of rhetoric. So, one of the good guys, IMO. And I just think that, like, if you were to do it today, like, for it to actually shake anybody, it would have to be Mark Hunter giving, like, specific instructions. Like, Mark Hunter walking somebody through how to blow up a pipeline, right? Or how to blow up a dam, or how to, like, that type of stuff. And they can't find this guy, right? Like, the type
flood
of
the
actualized...
"don't be gay" line so that they can't use any actual information, stuff like that. Yeah, like where it's
right.
Yeah,
you have to be specific. You can't be vague in the way this is. I agree.
Yeah, and having what he's saying have a causal effect and seeing the ripple effects, like actualized, instead of just like go crazy and jump on a car for 2 seconds and do some type of weird tongue out roar to a camera, despite being a pretty girl. Like
right.
It would have to be ramped up so much, right? Just unfortunately, given kind of the rhetoric of today, if you were to attempt this again, because otherwise, what he's saying now is like swallowed up in so much more lunacy on such bigger platforms, that what Mark Hunter is saying today is like milquetoast.
So maybe more masturbation. That's the real fix. All right. So
you said that about Space Jam.
I wish.
How can you say that about Space Jam and this movie, dude?
Okay, so Saving Grace's Conan, what was your favorite moment or element of the film?
I mean, I like how it sort of turns the John Hughes formula on its head. Right, all the adults are just enablers or actual evil, and like the kids kind of know what's up, so therefore it makes it a good youth rebellion movie. Is it Saving Grace or not? It's more or less forecasted podcasting.
Right, sure.
Mixed results. We don't. It's
coming from these podcasters,
right? Exactly, coming from people that operate in the format, and I think the opening monologue is just as hard today. And if it wasn't for the unfortunate font choices, It would be like I could see that being clipped on TikTok or something, and people be like, "What movie is this?" You know, and maybe more so because the unfortunate font choices. But yeah, I think that it's the lion's share. The critiques are largely directionless, but also salient. But I agree, the calls to action are non-existent.
Sure. Yeah. Sean?
I think Slater's really good. And I think like he needed this movie to kind of both, bridge a decade, but also to kind of ferry him into adult roles.
Yep.
He's very much like kind of the high school kid, but like we see this darkness to him here that we also saw in Heathers that, kind of pulls him a little bit into, like he goes from this to a cop, right? Like a good cop, but also like it's a good role for him, especially because we have this dichotomy. He's playing two characters, right? It's a little schizophrenic. But it's also kind of an actor's dream to have that type of role given to you at such a young age. And like, he's very natural. He's such a natural actor. Yeah. And I also think Samantha Mathis is really fucking good. It's kind of sad, because she has this like really great run, and then her fucking boyfriend dies in front of her at the Viper Room.
Yeah. And it kind of makes her nuclear, like radioactive, her career kind of falls off after that. And I think she's blamed kind of by the industry in a way that she absolutely shouldn't have been.
Yeah. And also like, I know that she took time off from that, and like, probably if you're her agent and in the, in the world of mid-90s being a young actress, like you have to strike when the iron is hot. And for her to like watch her fucking boyfriend River Phoenix die, and then want to get out of the industry and be away from, I think she left the country for a while.
She pulled a Molly Ringwald.
Yeah, like that could be, it could be career killing when you want to come back, because you've lost all this, and who's to say when somebody represents you that you're not just going to do it again? Like, it's really an unfair hand, of course, to deal her. And but yeah, in this era, Samantha Mathis, like a really great role for her, and I think she kind of crushes it.
Mine would be, I just think it's surprisingly progressive. Like with regards to LGBTQ community, like very much more, in the real sense, woke than you would assume. Anyway. So Conan, you confessed that you weren't much for nostalgia, but that you felt like you'd enjoy Pump Up the Volume now, and you were curious to see how it held up. What did you ultimately end up feeling about Pump Up the Volume upon your return these 30 years later?
I think it does hold up. I mean, there's obviously asterisks involved depending on the audience.
Sure.
If someone that lacks context for that era, it has to be a couple caveats given. But I think it's a good movie. Is it 5-star masterpiece? No. But it's good. I enjoyed coming back to it. Flabbergasted by how much stuff I'd forgotten about it. I think I maybe had underrated some elements of its influence on me, apparently, because I was
I
didn't even realize that's where it came from, right? But and again, I think the ending, which I remember being disappointing at the time, is actually kind of cool now. And of course, because what are we doing? We're sitting here on a podcast talking. We're talking hard.
Sure.
So yeah, I liked it, and held up better than I thought it was going to. Let's put it that way. I thought I was going to find Christian Slater mostly insufferable, and I did not. I thought it was good. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, I can echo that. I think it was
Same.
It was a little trepidatious kind of going into this, just because it's been so long, and what is especially now that I am older than that character, whereas I was probably 7 or 8 years younger than that character back then. And how much how I would have idolized a Mark Hunter and looked up to that. And I think I was going back into this thinking like, oh God, this is just going to be so fucking cringy because it's a high school kid telling me like how the world is. But it has a good heart.
Yeah.
And it the screenplay is adept. We got good actors. We got good kid actors. Like, those worries were, washed away pretty quickly.
It's a legitimate concern too when we revisit stuff like this. We're like, we'll see
For sure.
I don't have to tell you guys. You deal with that on a regular basis.
Yep, that's pretty much all we deal with.
Yeah.
So before we say goodbye to the listeners at home, where can they find you, Conan?
Sure, yeah. Conan Neutron, The Secret Friends, Way of the Neutrons, out now. You can pre-order that. You can listen to it for free and all the things you normally can listen on. Potentially coming to a city near you. Check neutronfriends.bandcamp.com, neutronfriends.com to find that out. Lots of rock and roll happening 2025. Conan Neutron Protonic Reversal, my Talking Hard podcast. Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Streamed live, podcasted later. Going on, like I said, moving into year 12 coming up, depending on when this drops. And, lots of cool, interesting stuff from there. And then moving Extravaganza, weekly movie discussion. Very much, if you're a fan of the show, I think you find a lot to love there as well. Reverent, lively, but informed as well, which is my love language, really. And so tune into that and all the things you normally would find it. Caterwaul, if you're into the noisy, crazy, weird rock music. Many people make the pilgrimage to Minneapolis every year for it, something we don't take lightly. We take a lot of pride in what we do for that. And then as a dude, I'm on all the social medias. Conan Neutron is just my name. So, you can find me. And
you're one of the lucky ones who are findable by your moniker.
I mean, being born a Conan, I'm not sure if I would call it lucky, but it's turned out okay in a modern context. But yeah,
Sure.
It's easily searchable.
But
right.
But as a Josh Dugan and Sean McGrath,
right, I get it.
Yeah,
Absolutely, I get it. Her.
Yeah, it's mostly just Irish members of Parliament for me.
Yeah, mayor of Detroit or something. I don't know. Whatever. It sucks.
And thanks for having me. I enjoy the show, so it's great to be on.
Yeah, and oh, we're so glad to have you on. Love you on Movie Night Extravaganza. I've enjoyed what I've listened to of Protonic Reversal as well. Yeah, so pretty jazzed to have you on. Oh, and yeah, so you're on Letterboxd, Blue Sky.
Oh yeah, Letterboxd, Conan Neutron. Yeah, Blue Sky, Threads, I guess.
Sure.
Friendster, MySpace.
Do you have a PO box?
Right. Maybe if it's only red letters are going to be read on air, though. Yeah. Anything. I guess most anything you can think of. I think I'm on Mastodon. I don't know. I haven't looked at it forever, but I guess.
Yeah, but you use.
I
use
Letterboxd.
I
use Letterboxd. I do use Instagram. It's the band and my personal account are basically the same one, but those are probably the three best ones. The best ones. One,
sure.
Okay, like whatever. But I'm on all of them, much to my eternal chagrin. I would love not to be. Yeah,
same.
Yeah. Hit me up or don't.
Yeah. Make sure to follow him on Letterboxd. Everyone should be on Letterboxd. Anyway, well, thank you, Conan.
Thank you.
So be it.
It's a pleasure. So be it.
Talk hard.
Talk hard, guys.
You've just listened to another installment of the Unkind Rewind podcast, mining and potentially ruining your childhood for content, one film at a time. Unkind Rewind is a Munchcast production and can be ingested wherever you listen to podcasts and on the Unkind Rewind YouTube channel. Music for this and every other episode of Unkind Rewind was composed by Divorcio Suave. Rate, review, like, and subscribe to Unkind Rewind on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and Good Pods. Links to all our social media accounts are in our show notes, but you'll find us as at Unkind Rewind Pod on nearly every social media platform, all of which are available at our website, unkindrewind.com. If you have a question, concern, complaint, or feedback, you can email the podcast at unkindrewindpod@gmail.com or call into our call-in line, area code 507-479-6440, and leave a message that can be played on air. Fans should join the Munchcast Discord to discuss this or any other episode of the Unkind Rewind with like-minded people. This dialogue may just make it into a future episode of the pod. The Unkind Rewind Patreon will be coming soon, so start squirreling that pocket change away. Thank you for listening to another Unkind Rewind.